Very good. I remembered. I remembered.
Uh,
So yeah, so I was saying, just that awareness of concepts like impeccability are very, very transformative, and we aiming to make these a part of our general awareness. So yes, like generally we're aware of our bodies and our physicality and maybe our hair, for some people, or whatever. But we want to add in and expand that awareness to incorporate all of those concepts that are in our power dictionary. We want to have those with us at all times, and we want to know them to such an extent that we don't have to remember them, that they just become a part of our awareness. Yeah.
okay. Yep.
Does that help with the understanding of awareness
Yeah, it
of what it is?
does.
Okay.
Hmm.
So it's knowing what we know, but deliberately. And also, we could say awareness is a very specialized use of attention, or attention is a specialized use of awareness. They kind of go together. It's like I was saying about that floodlight and the spotlight. So we want to
Right.
use that light. If we think of awareness as light, it puts light on the dark corners of the world and our mind and our insides and our lives and our what we're doing and everything. So it's very powerful in that way. It gives us more ability to do and to use what we have, right?
Right.
I mean, we all have this inside us. Impeccability is really inside, even if you've never heard the word, the understanding of the concept in a deeper thing. When you explain it to somebody who's never heard the word, and you can explain the concept without saying the word impeccability, oh, okay, I know what you mean. I understand what it is. So they get it, right? But they're not necessarily aware of it until we bring it out. So that's what awareness is. We want to know what we know, and that's what being aware is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that you ask like that when something is, it's sitting in your heart. In other words, that point of awareness was a big deal to you. It was kind of a stick point in a sense. You know what I mean? You couldn't really move until you'd resolved that. That's very, very, very important, and a huge gift as well. When you ask something earnestly like that, see what it does to me. My mind, it doesn't let go, inside me. I like think about this. How can I explain it better? How can I? And because these are difficult concepts, they're not simple, they're not easy, and we do need to have that full connectivity with these concepts. We need to resonate with them so that they can become ours, and that's the key thing. At some point, I'm keen to hear as we go along. This will come more for you, but at some point, I am keen to hear you give me a take back on how you understand awareness to be, because that's when we really start to own it. But I would say hold on at this moment. Let it stew a little bit, let more of it come. Get more windows into looking at awareness and all the other things, and then later on we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I mean, you can do it now if you want. If you really feel like you've got a angle on it, sure, or by all means, share as the pressure comes inside you, as appropriate. In other words, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel as though not too very long ago, if somebody would ask me, do you feel like you're a person who has awareness? I would say, oh yes, I feel like I am, and I stay in the moment. And but those were just sort of words, and I wanted, I mean, at the time, I wanted to be that, but yet there was some kind of like question mark, a little bit of, are you really in the moment? What does that really mean? Are you really aware? Or are you just feeling like you really, really want to be there for, if you say it, you will be. So, but are you really, kind of thing? And like I would try to feel my way through if I had to define awareness, because that's sometimes my mind does that. I have to define things and
Mm.
like feel them so that I can get it. Um, I had a really hard time. It just, like I was sharing with you, it just seemed fluffy. It just seemed
Yeah.
like I couldn't put my hands on it. It was just very abstract.
Yep.
And so it was like, I know I desire it. I know I want to be it, but am I really, kind of thing. So
Right.
I still feel like I'm at times I'm in the moment, at times my where my focused energy is exactly what where it should be. So I have moments where I feel like I'm aware, and I can tell the difference when I am and when I'm not, for
Right,
sure.
right. That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and that's why when we look at that mind map, exactly what you're saying. Awareness is connected to appropriateness, and awareness is connected to attention, and it's connected to attunement, and it's connected to application. Where's that mind map? Let me pull that up here. I like this mind map. I must say, I'm really enjoying it like crazy. I've had all these concepts in a spreadsheet for years, and I started to work on this mind map, and I never got to finish it, and because it's kind of a big job, but I finally got to implement it in a way that I really like. So I'm quite enjoying this, I must say.
I like it too. It's kind of like my mind. All these,
Right,
seriously. I
right.
mean, this is what's been going on in my head, and it was just like take all that information and whirl it around up there, and that's what was going around in my mind, and I was trying to make sense of it, and this helps a lot.
Yes, it does. All right. So if we look at these four big points over here: appropriateness, attunement, application, awareness, and we like that they're all A's. I don't know. That just gives me a kick. Just because it's the A+ philosophy. That's why we called it the A+. It just so happens that they're all A terms. But so when we look at awareness, we've got attention and appreciation. Okay, it's a very particular type of awareness, appreciation. We're taking awareness and we turning it into a way that really helps us, that's positive for us, that's good, that makes us feel good. And we want these abstract things. But again, see, all of them, they go into application. All of this, it channels into application, and from there it goes into, we start to apply it through our self-conception, through building our character, and then we do specific things, habit management, energy management, all that, and use impeccability and strategy, and it all is for the purpose of power. And power in terms of personal power, in other words, we want to be able to use all of this stuff. So we can say, in a sense, awareness is we want to hold all of these things in ourselves at the same time, right? Not just to be caught in one particular little bubble. Let's say sharing, okay? Sharing is a very profound and powerful awareness. And when we're aware of what sharing is, when we're aware just of people around us and we share in a free way, it's a big deal. But we can get just kind of caught in the bubble of sharing. And, you can just share all about your cat and your food and all that all day. And, you know what I mean? Get in that bubble. Not that it's inappropriate necessarily, because, people can take it or leave it. But you just get limited in a bubble. So we want this awareness to have that ability to keep all of this stuff inside us and be connected to it all at the same time. Now, that seems like a very big job to do, and it seems almost impossible at this stage. How are we going to learn all the stuff and have this all? If we think of memory learning, then yes, this becomes a very big challenge and it becomes almost ridiculous. However, that's not what we're going to do. We are going to know all of this through understanding. In the same way as language in general. You don't remember all of the words in one go. I mean, if I had to ask you, hey, Donna, rattle off all the words that you know, you wouldn't be able to do it, right?
Right.
But you can use them, right?
Right.
You use all those words every day, but you can't make a list of them, for instance. If you had to make a mind map of all the words that you know like this, it would take a lot of doing it. It wouldn't just come right away, right?
Right.
In the same way, this doesn't just come about. That's why we build that dictionary of power, and we build it organically. And every time we go back to it, like with awareness, your entry of awareness in your dictionary of power, keep expanding that definition. Every time we chat about it, say, there's another little piece of the puzzle. Keep adding that piece of the puzzle into your puzzle. Not puzzle. My tongue is a bit sticky. I was eating peanut butter. So, keep.
What fractal conception?
What? Oh, all right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point to ask. Okay, so a fractal conception is a way. The reason why we use that term fractal, I don't know if you've seen fractals on the internet. When they do those big patterns that come from a fractal.
Yes.
All right. So
I
what that is,
fractals in a variety of different means.
correct.
Spiritually fractal, are
Right,
you
but,
saying?
but right, but the base of what a fractal actually is, it's simply a pattern. Like for instance, you say, take a line and put another line, join that line together at a 40-degree angle. That's it. Let's just and then repeat. That's typically what a fractal is. Some very basic pattern that just keeps on getting repeated. So you get one line and and then you do it again and again and again, and it makes these incredible complex patterns. So because you're starting with something simple and you just keep going, it tends to work itself out, and you get to see something that you wouldn't have seen just from that original little formula itself. So that's what we use, but we're taking it in a little bit. We're extending it a little bit to say a fractal conception. To us, it's like saying it's a self-telling story. All right. So appropriateness is an excellent example of that. If we just say, oh, appropriateness, and what is appropriateness like, and why is appropriateness this like core concept? Why do we love appropriateness? Because if you think yourself, okay, and now I'm saying I'm right here and I've got this idea of appropriateness. Well, what the hell does appropriate mean? Appropriate to what? Automatically the word itself prompts that question. It forces you to ask appropriate to what, or in what context, or to what goal. You have to have both in order to determine what your appropriateness is, right? So if
Right.
you apply a bit of energy to appropriateness, in other words, if you just think about it a bit, you're forced to ask, in what context and what am I trying to achieve? What are my goals or my motivations, right? Then only can you determine appropriateness. Because, like the example we always use, what you do to be appropriate at a party or at a wedding or at a funeral or at a business meeting, they're all different, right? So different contexts and you have different goals. So it's context and goals which determine appropriateness. But the point I'm making is not about appropriateness. It's just how the word has packed into it a little story that if you start to just think about it a little bit, it becomes self-explanatory, right? So that's why we like fractal conceptions. They are very, very powerful. They pack a lot into just one conception, and from that you can kind of work it out. Now, let's see. Let's go through a couple of fractal conceptions. I don't see them right here right away, but they're here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Like accept without accepting, or believe without believing. If you kind of think about those, they don't make sense at first, right? You say accept
Right.
without accepting. What the hell? How can you accept without accepting, or believe without believing, or trust without trusting? But when we think it through a little bit, oh, okay, I see what they mean. It's that you set yourself up to interact in such a way that whether something is true or not doesn't matter, right?
Right.
There you go. So that's accept without accepting, or believe without believing. I'm going to get value either way. And it doesn't matter to me if something actually turns out to be true or not. Either way, I'm going to get value out of it. So, like those zebra that go down to the water hole. They believe without believing that the lions aren't going to eat them because the lions are chill, but they don't go closer than that commitment line. So, they set themselves to be strategically okay in either way. They can still run away should the lions change their mind, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's very powerful, because just when we think of those, and a lot of these terms, all of them, they lead to more when we think about them. So we like to have that fractal conception because it's like a key point from which you just put. It's like a seed. That's what a fractal conception is really, and you just have to water that seed with some thinking, right? We're thinking it through a little bit, and that's what a fractal conception is. It's really just a thought seed.
Okay.
Does
Thank
that
you.
help? Oh, pleasure, pleasure. I love when you ask it. It really helps, and it's fantastic, and it's awesome, and it's just really brilliant. So again, all of this stuff, it's got to act in application. Without application, it's all useless, right? Because look what's right under application: real self. That's what we're trying to get to, real self. And really, I don't have a nice place to put energy, because some of this goes up and down, but we start with energy, just kind of our raw energy, and all of this application and the self-conception and our character and habit management, impeccability, strategy, all are for the purpose of leveraging energy into power.
Right.
That's what we want. Because if we just have this energy, all right, and we don't have the ability to actually use it, then it's kind of useless to a large extent. Or we're at the mercy of that energy, right? Like emotions. If we don't have the ability to fully deal with our emotions or our thoughts or our all the stuff, the world around us, the forces of the world, the energies of the world, they kind of, we're at the mercy of them, or they're useless to us, either way, right? So we
Right.
want to transform all of that into power so that we can use it. Because otherwise, what's the damn point, right?
Right.
I mean, and the
And
same thing. Oh,
I'm sorry.
no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no.
That just brought to a point of kind of energy management. There's this, just one sec. As a physical being, you have a story, or I'll just say I have a story of what I consider in my awareness of the past, quote unquote. And that story involved a lot of things, obviously. We all have our story. I'm 59 years old, so that's a lot of quote unquote years of story. And in where I am now, as I've gone through and been working with you, a lot of energy has been sort of um, whirling around a little bit, and it feels a little
Yes.
out of control since I've been doing this. And I would equate that in worldly terms as a less than peaceful, the opposite of peaceful feeling.
Gotcha.
Butterflies and fluttering, and to the point of not so comfortable. And um, when my state of mind is floating in that state, I use that in ways to just things that are not necessarily beneficial for me, because I feel like exactly what you had said hit it right on the head. It's like it's just so much. I have so much energy, and I'm not using it as a power, so it's almost the opposite of power, and it's not being used in a positive way. It's not showing itself in a positive way. And I know that it's happening, and yet I feel as though I don't have power over it. It's more of a reaction to it. And I find myself like wanting to pull myself in
Mm.
and make sure everything around me is kind of away.
Ah, yeah, you. Donna, that just when we zoom out. So when in doubt, zoom out, right? And we look overview perspective, and we look at the totality of what's going on. So just for me to recap, I want to understand something to be sure. You said these energies that are swirling around you and kind of buffeting at you, they've increased since we've started interacting.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, all right. That's most excellent. All right. You might not think so, but it is. Why? It's because of implications. The stuff that we talk about, all that stuff on the mind map, that's a lot of information. That's that's a lifetime's stuff that's all put there. Now, yes, that's a lifetime's worth of working that out, when one does it just from scratch. We can, of course, get to using it much quicker when we don't have to all do it from scratch, right? But it's a huge amount of information coming at you. So we have to understand this. And the brain is saying, hey, you know what? There's implications to all of this stuff. Wow. First of all, number one implication is there's a lot to know and learn, right?
Right.
It's like, shit, crap. Am I going to be able to learn this? So automatically that implication kicks in. And now there's self-doubt that comes in, and uncertainty, and there's overwhelm that kicks in because it's so much and all this kind of stuff. So don't worry about it right now. Yes, you're going to feel all these energies, and it's going to feel uncertain because you are stepping into this whole new world of all of this stuff. Now, again, too, understand that as we go through this, yes, like fractal conceptions, it's a new thing, but not all everything is a new thing. Like soul lessons that you understand already. Obvious sensibility that you understand. So the stuff will connect and it will click and it will fall into place as you go along. So don't worry about it. Truly, it's not a worry. Just understand that it's a lot, and at first it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to feel like there's a lot going on because it's new. All right. Let's look at this in the context of your inner bureaucrats. And what is the job of those inner bureaucrats? Their job is to keep you alive, right?
Right.
That's their task. That's their mandate. Say, hey, we got to keep you alive. We got to keep you sensible. We got to kind of protect you from yourself. So they have to be cautious when it comes to new information, because new information is just by nature risky. It hasn't been tested, hasn't been proven. It's risky, right? So they have to be cautious. So there is that bit of uncomfortableness, because uncomfortableness goes with being cautious. If we aren't cautious and uncomfortable at the same time, then we're just going to be foolhardy and we're just going to jump in and do things, right? Then caution will have no value, right?
Right.
So your sensible side says, hey, I got to be uncomfortable with this because it's new. I got to check it out. I got to make sure it actually has value, that it's safe, right? And that it's actually good for me. So it's very powerful, and it's very important to be uncomfortable for precisely that purpose, that you need to make that effort to get comfortable with the various aspects. So like you asked about awareness or whatever you want to know about. And why we on these sessions, it's precisely for that. We're going to go through everything and just get comfortable with it as we go along. And we're going to customize it to you. We don't have to follow the course. It's just the online sessions are there to bring stuff out in you and to give an idea. And then we discuss it in the sessions. And then we get to customize it precisely to Donna.
Okay.
So it's good. It's good.
Can
Yeah.
I share in a very worldly way?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay. So my life experiences were very victim programmed.
Yes.
And I can now sit back and look at that
Yeah.
programming, and I observe it and don't feel like I am it any longer.
Fantastic.
I also know that currently I have relationships that connect at a higher level. I feel like, I don't know how to say it, but our higher selves connect.
Yes. Yes.
And in that, there, I have a underlying, I don't have a comfort level with, as I was trying to communicate, and it goes back to cueing, but there's like themes, like there's a lot of discussion about divorced. I'm divorced. And that divorce feels like it's beyond just going into a court and my marriage was resolved. I know
Yeah.
there's something deeper there,
Yeah.
but I don't know what it is. But
Right.
it's the topic of divorce has come up in the last 3 days so many times that it's like, okay, and I get this butterfly feeling like, what is it that I'm supposed to be getting here about this topic? And very rarely am I instinctively wrong about that.
Brilliant.
And then the other is, when I have those feelings of the butterflies and the opposite of peace, when people say to me, oh, I love coming here, it's so peaceful, you seem so together and spiritual and you're aware, and I feel as though there is a contrast there, because I don't necessarily feel that, because I've got the,
I hear you.
you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Okay.
I hear you. Exactly. Yeah.
So I feel fakey,
Yep.
and I don't like that. And then, like recently, I have a relationship with somebody, and in that, it's like three things. There's like uh, Abraham Hicks and Jerry Hicks. I don't know if you know who they are, but their teachings are: stay focused on what you want and keep your thoughts positive and deliberate and live intentionally and in the moment, and don't focus on the lack of, they're not there yet, because then
Right.
that just puts up a obstacle of them coming to you. I do that often. And so I'm working on that. And then there's a thought process like Eckhart Tolle, who's more in the moment. And those people fascinate me because I just see them as transcending almost any needs or wants, that they fully understand that everything they need or and they want is within themselves.
Right.
But then that almost feels like I'm going to be, quote unquote, alone in the world. That goes back to the relationship I'm in, my kids, my friends, whatever relationship, they're not going to be able to relate to me because I'm going to be this
Right.
flying high, person that's not of this world, but I'm here. So
Gotcha.
there's that. And a lot of times it's like, do you focus on what you want, or do you just stay satisfied with who you are and work on your own awareness? Should I be totally by myself the next month or so and just totally concentrate on this? Because, like, just very worldly, let's say I want a house, for example, and I want a lifelong partner, and I want to be able to go camping and go to kayaking
Right.
and do all these things. And I do. And I have this partnership with somebody. Well, there's a part of me that knows that that's not really what's going on.
Mm.
And that's not really my heart's desire.
Yeah.
It's much deeper than that, but I feel like the other person knows that, I know that, but I don't know how to get to that deeper part and just be in the moment. So I recently just said the worldly stuff almost like an excuse, like a way of getting out of that so I don't destroy it while I'm trying to find myself back to me.
Mm. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. So if we take all of that, we've got a lot of stuff swirling about there. And if I were to zoom out on that, right, overview perspective, which is really useful in this case, we look at the
Yeah.
bigger picture, and we take a lot of information in there, but we sort it into abstract concepts, into bigger, like we did on the mind map, into kind of top
Right.
level things. We say, okay, so one thing that is sort of clear there is that there's doubt concerning motivations, or unclarity, not necessarily doubt, right? So we
Right.
need more clarity of intent and motivations, which is determining what's important to you. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. That's the one thing. So motivation slash intent. That's the one thing that came to me that's important to resolve, to figure out, to get clarity on. Secondly, there are beliefs. A lot of beliefs in there. I should want this, I should want that. Do I want this? Do I want that? What do I really want to do? So a lot of beliefs, like the belief in being alone. Well, we believe that being alone is a negative, but it's not necessarily so. It's just a belief, right? It's not actually necessarily true. There's some people who love being alone, right? So again, see what I mean? Or the belief in that I have to have this, I have to have that. So the beliefs are very important. Thirdly, there is what do I want? And that in itself is kind of a belief, right? So we have to understand that when we look at our own wants and desires, that's somewhat problematic. Because how do I know what's really good for me in the overall universal context?
Well, and that's where my contrast comes, because I know that, but I'm
Exactly.
not living it. And
Exactly.
the other thing is, like, when you were talking about beliefs, what struck me when you were talking about that is the like the whole city of love. There's Puppy Palace and this whole thing with dogs, and Peace Place, and there's a restaurant, and it's like this futuristic city.
I love it.
Well,
I love it.
I know it's a very cool place.
Right.
Um,
And
the,
feel free to go into detail. To go into as much detail as you need. It's not a problem at all. It's very important,
well,
actually.
there's this whole city out there, and like when let's just say this one partnership that I just ended, for example, even though that was the last thing I wanted to do, that's that I just this stuff is kind of, ooh, It's just really, it's really hitting me. And it's not that I wanted to end my experiences with this person. It was a desire to keep our divine connection there. And
Ah,
I feel like when you're muddling down in this energy and it's not vibing high and positive because you're trying to figure out who you are, then that divine connection has the potential of like disconnecting and our experiences ending. So I rather
yeah,
back away
right.
and figure out me first, and
Yeah.
then hopefully find my way back to that level of connection with this person. I don't know if that makes
Oh,
sense.
it makes total sense. Absolutely makes total and absolute sense. That is most fantastic, and that's really super awesomely and excellent. And there's a lot of awareness that goes into that. Also, we look at implications. Implications are really, really important. So, by implication, if you say, I'm willing to forego the ordinary aspects of my relationship because I want the higher aspect as more important to me, that's the implication, right?
Right.
So, you're saying that deeper
But
stuff,
I couldn't say that to that person. I
right,
could not.
right,
I could not use those words with that person.
right, right. But you
They
can,
just came talking to you.
gotcha.
And then the last day I've been trying to figure this out. And when I speak with that person, I have to take those things that are muddled up, like I
Right,
just fairly clearly said to you, and I put them in worldly terms,
right.
and I transform it into this, well, I just want to meet a new person and date them. Oh my word,
No,
that's like
right,
I
right,
know.
right. So the issue is clarity of intent. And you express yourself quite fine, by the way. You got to get rid of that idea that you don't express yourself fine. I understood everything you said was quite lucid and very clear, and there was no muddledness. I understood exactly what you do. When you take the time and slow down and realize that you're not going to say everything just in 2 or 3 words, it takes time to express these things. And when you do take that time, it's perfectly clear what you're saying. What you're trying to express is something that's complex. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But there was no redundancy or muddledness or confusion. No, it was perfectly clear. You'll see. Watch the video and you tell me if you think you're not clear. Oh, you're very clear. It's really beautiful. It's really awesome. All right. So let's go back to this. And that's the start of the course is clarity of intent. So I think that's important to go back and say, hey, we want clarity of intent. So a nice exercise here is to determine clarity of intent is to just right now write down all the things that you want in any order. Doesn't matter. Just start writing, whether it's in the worldly thing or physical needs. Doesn't matter. I want a house. I want to go kayaking. I want spirituality. Just keep writing. Just like pop as they come. Right. I'm just thinking of things that you said. You know, a house, a relationship, kayaking, nature, spirituality, deeper connection.
Okay,
Keep going.
all
Keep
of
going.
that.
Yeah. Yes. Keep
Okay.
writing. Just keep writing like a brainstorm thing. Just once. Whatever you want and desire, that's it. Just write them down in any kind of thing. Like I said, you know, whether it's spiritual, higher self, local self, worldly self, doesn't matter. You know.
Do you want me to keep going?
Oh, you keep going as long as you need to. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Do you have access to a spreadsheet right there where you're at now?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. I never mind.
But everything that I'm writing down, like the house, for example, and I've tried to share this. the house isn't a house as in how I used to be, where I had a belief that at 25 you got married, quote unquote, the traditional marriage.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
Catholic. I want a house with a picket fence. But yet it still sounds that way, even
Gotcha.
though inside my heart knows the house is just a tool that
Yes.
I can bring people to,
Right.
so that there's a dialogue about higher things that matter.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I can have a big table
I'm
instead of
laughing
this.
because I'm laughing. Sorry, keep going. Sorry, keep going. No, I'm
No,
laughing
no.
because it's exactly the reason I asked you to write that list. It's coming out just in you talking about making the list. The idea
Yeah.
for the list is that's why I said if you had a spreadsheet would be cool, because then you put them all into the spreadsheet, and then the idea is, yeah, I'll just show you what I mean. Let me go share. So you take the terms, and then you say, okay, is helping more important than adamance? I mean, this is just, these are not in the same thing as wants, but then you drag it higher, and so you take that list and you prioritize it. In other words, that's the exercise. Once you have
Okay.
that list, now go and say, okay, what's not very important? So split the list into two. Say not that important and important. Maybe just put a little star next to important and a little circle next to unimportant, or underline what's important. It doesn't matter. Anything that's easy and quick to do.
Okay.
All right. So now you take the important stuff and you say, what of those is the most important? And then you make a list, most important at the top, and you put less important underneath that. But really, all we're interested in is what's the couple of the most important things up at the top.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're getting perspective on what you want, right? Very simple. I mean,
Yeah.
very, very simple. But when you look at that list now and say, oh my God, yes, I'm worrying about being liked in the office. Who the fuck cares? And when I'm worried about, when what's more important to me is, for instance, my soul, my self awareness, my actualization, my getting my shit together, all the stuff. That's much more important, the higher stuff, right? Always. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Right. I mean, if you
I
had to
don't
now,
have
if
any of that other stuff on here.
exactly, but they in us as a matter of habit. So we have to just understand that. Say, okay, I know it's legacy stuff from before, it's conditioning stuff. All right, yes, it has an importance. It doesn't mean going kayaking is not important. It's just not the most important, right? So we're not saying they're unimportant. We're just saying they're relatively much less important. If there's time to get to kayaking, fine, I'll do that also. Why not? I'll enjoy it. It might become more important because, hey, I need a break from all this, soul stuff, and I need to recharge my energy. So then kayaking might go to the very top of the list because you need to recharge. You see what I mean?
Right.
So that list isn't
That's
static.
exactly what it is. It's all tied to spirituality, though, and
Exactly.
self-actualization. Yeah, that's exactly
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
house is, kayaking is.
Exactly. So you need to start making your own mind map, right?
I know. Right.
So start doing that literally, and also to understand that when you make this mind map, the things are connected. Let me go back to that mind map there. Let's see. They're not in isolation, and they don't necessarily keep their positions as well. They're all linked together. That's why we have these arrows. And sometimes the arrows go, like, from appropriateness goes to attunement, and then attunement goes back up to perspective shifting, and same with awareness. And we use perspective shifting to make sense of everything. That's why it's right at the very top here. So the stuff changes, you see, and it depends on your intent and all of the stuff. So it's all interrelated, it's all interconnected. So just know that. And when you look at that list of yours, you say, wow, you know what jumps out at me? It's like, yeah, you've got a whole like all these little green ones here. They kind of at the stuff that's the detail of the list, right? So
Right.
you can take that list of yours and you can put it into like categories, you know what I mean? Like this. And then you say, wow, those are all, yeah, ways of living, but they all connect to, in this case, spirituality. Everything on your list is falling under the bigger heading of spirituality, right?
Right.
That's a very important realization right there, isn't it?
Right.
We
And
ask.
I feel like they're in contrast, though. There's something within me. There's a belief within me that feels like I either have to be spiritual or I'm worldly.
Says
And
who?
I don't know. It's a very strong, I don't
well,
know.
well,
It's,
okay.
I'm serious to the point where it's like I feel like I have to make a choice of like almost God or
All right.
universe
Right.
versus relationships with other people.
I love it. I love it. Now, isn't that in itself a very, very powerful awareness of yourself? Right there. So write that
Yeah.
down. Write that down. Like not as a statement, but as an awareness. In other words, I feel like there's a choice between spirituality and worldliness.
And that makes me feel butterflies.
Exactly. It's very exciting. All right. So there's
No, not exciting.
well, I'll tell you why it's exciting right now, because we move towards we're going into this process of self-discovery,
Okay.
right? And self-discovery is very, very, very powerful. Um, that's interesting. I don't think I have self-discovery on my mind map here. But anyway, we'll add it in. So self-discovery is very, very powerful. Now, we've written that statement not as a definition of an endpoint, but we're going to look. You asked about fractal conceptions. That statement
Right.
that statement is kind of a fractal conception in itself, because it's somewhat of a self-telling story. So let's water it with some thinking it through. And we're going to think it through to the end, because that's very important. Got to think things through to the end. All right. So your
Okay.
statement says, I feel like, there's a choice between spirituality and worldliness. Now, when you say, first thing that comes to mind is why? There's the implication that there's a difference and that there is supposed to be a choice between the two. Says bloody who? I,
I don't even know.
I'm asking you, is there a choice? And besides which, even if somebody else said there is a choice, is it a choice to you?
I feel like somewhere inside me, there's always a contrast between the two. And like it's,
Exactly. Right.
yeah,
Yes. Okay. So we say, all right, now let's take spirituality and worldliness as black and white. Okay.
okay.
Just for argument's sake, we're going to say, oh, we're going to add a color concept to that. What about the concept of attunement?
I don't really understand attunement, I don't believe.
Exactly right. So we're going to get there, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. So now we're going to say there's this potential opposites, but we're going to say, hey, why can't we combine them?
Well, that's what I want more than anything.
Exactly.
Honestly, that's on the top of my list.
Yes. So we say through attunement, or another way of saying it, through perspective shifting. The sublime can be found in the mundane. It's just a perspective shift away. So we have to shift our perspective on this. So in other words, they don't have to be in opposition. They can coincide. You look so unhappy right now. Don't look unhappy, Donna. It's all right. It's not serious. Truly, you'll see. It's fun. It's exciting. We just have to shift on it. It's quite magical. All right, let me ask you this. You like going into nature, and nature's spiritual to you, I'm assuming, if you like going kayaking, right?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
nature.
Right. Now, nature is spiritual to you. Is it so to everybody?
Probably
No.
not.
No, some people go out and it's a tree, it's a bush, it's this, it's that, and it's just all mundane to them. Right?
Right.
Now,
Yes.
why is nature spiritual to you? Isn't the mundanity of nature and spirituality one and the same to you? You've combined those two. Everything in nature, it's all spiritual to you. Every single bit of that mundanity is spiritual to you, right?
Right.
Why is it only nature that can be that way?
Hmm.
We're using the computer for a very spiritual purpose right now. It's a very mundane instrument, but we're using it for incredible spiritual purpose right now, aren't we?
Yes.
All right, there you go. So it's a start. But again, too, every single thing in your life, in the same way as nature can be spiritual, what about your work, your daily routines? Why can't it all be spiritual?
Those areas that I have a perspective that are the places where through conversation the things that I perceive are things I need to work on, like the conversations about divorce or narcissism or selfishness. Those themes happen there, and that doesn't feel so good. And so
Why? But isn't that spiritual even though it doesn't feel good because growth is uncomfortable sometimes, no? Because we
it's, yeah.
but so if you get into a conversation, let's just say over the internet with some random stranger about divorce, it may be a very mundane conversation to them, but isn't this a very spiritual for you? Why? Because it's about clearing up things that you need to resolve. And you're clearing up those energy blockages, which are still kind of got some hang up or some kind of a unresolved thing with divorce. And that's that energy now, when it's cleared up, you can use it for spiritual purposes, right?
Right.
So the conversation really has a spiritual intent if you look at it that way. It's raising your awareness about divorce, which is raising awareness is exactly the most spiritual thing we can do. It's that last session we did, making sense of the world. Yeah.
Do the other people know? I mean, do they have a sense of awareness that they're assisting you, or are they just being kind of used? They've opened themselves up as the vehicle for that conversation to happen.
Some do. Let me put it this way: they all do now because I make it clear to them that they assist me. But they don't necessarily think of it that way themselves. I bring that into awareness very purposely because I don't want people to feel that our interactions are one-sided because for most people, they feel a desire to reciprocate. And sometimes because if they can't reciprocate in kind, according to them, they stop interacting because they feel too guilty. Does that make
Ah,
sense?
yeah.
It's cockeyed. It doesn't make any sense. I have a profound story of somebody. I've got it as a post somewhere. We were sharing and interacting, and they were like, "Wow, wow, wow!" And like they were really being expanded in their mind, and everything was going on. Actually, the conversation, the part came to a part where I mentioned the concept of noble. I named this concept of noble and bringing noble, nobleness, bringing it into our lives and living it. And it like really blew their mind. And as they were talking about, wow, it's such a powerful concept. Literally, their earth was shaken up. Their whole world started to rock. An earthquake happened right at that exact moment. It was quite incredible. They had to run outside. I've got a whole little post about it. My point is that the world was so literally rocked. I mean, it was just like the universe reminded me, this is a huge deal. Like, shake yourself up, like, get out of your bubble. And it's like, hey, we were talking about doing stuff together and all this. End of the day was nothing came out of all of that interaction. We had loads and loads of interaction. Nothing came out of it. Why? Because they feel, but I've got nothing to contribute. Like, man alive, I kept telling you think this is not anything in it for me. Of course, there's lots in it for me. It's a reciprocal thing, sharing, collaboration. 1 + 1 equal more, right?
Right.
When we collaborate. And people don't understand that. And they don't want to sometimes. They're too caught up in ego bubbles and old historical things like, okay, I'm sorry, but it's such a waste. So I make a point to make it very clear that, that there's a lot, it's two ways and, there's benefit both ways. So don't worry about that. And other people and there's no one like you. So, everybody's different. I'm keen to get Bina on the call, and then you get uh, a different perspective because she's also coming from a very very different perspective, and she sort of feels a lot of the things in the same way as you do. So but anyway, at some point, you'll see as we interact with more people, not everybody's always available. So when they do, you'll get more perspective on how the others interact and connect. But it's not really that important. It's how you interact and connect. It's how we get value out of it just when we do. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to get rid of the the energy blocks so
Okay.
that I align
Okay.
and do the work.
Right, right. I mean, I am cognizant of that, and I am focused on that, and I am keen on that. So really, basically, what I'm trying to say is, I want to make this shift to taking the mundane, the worldly stuff, and saying it is not in opposition. It's not two different things. There's no reason we can't combine them in the same way as you combined it in nature. We can take the rest of the world stuff and not only nature to be all spiritual. So so we're going to shift that to say worldly and spiritual aren't two different things. They're one and the same. When we are truly spiritual, we see everything as spiritual.
You definitely have a different lens, that's for sure.
Okay, so take that last session that we did about making sense, right? What was
Right.
the one very, very key, well, two major, actually three things. First, we said, what is our life motivation, right? Our life intent, and then we said that is to raise and develop and enhance awareness, right? And then
Right.
there was a third incredibly powerful point from that. We said the entire world, every single thing in the world is geared towards raising and enhancing our awareness. In other words, the world is a giant school for assisting us in our awareness. What's another way of saying that? We're basically saying the world is this incredible spiritual place.
Yeah, I have those
Right.
experiences all the time. And they used to make me, as I shared with you, what I would term a less than happy, the opposite of happy. But I sometimes wonder if this spiritual shift in awareness and the butterflies and how it's feeling in my body is actually like I'm defining it by worldly terms that may not even be what's really happening.
Why? Why?
So let's say I have butterflies, and I would call that, I'll just use the word anxiety.
Mm.
I get very anxious,
Why?
or it feels like I can't keep moving forward and growing. It gets overwhelming. Maybe that's not really what it is.
No, maybe you're just being cautious.
Maybe it's excitement.
There you
Maybe the
go.
butterflies are
Exactly.
excitement.
Exactly. Because it's magic. You can connecting to magic. Now, I would say that just for argument's sake, and I would assume, and just from the way listening to you, I would say that there's some concern about realness, right? Your spirituality, is it real or not? Does
Yeah.
that matter? Like, is this for real? Is this actually so or not?
Hmm.
Is that a concern for you?
I gotta let that one sit for a minute.
Okay. Okay.
In talking with Nikki, for example,
Uh-huh.
when she shared about guardian angels and her experience, there's many people that I read about or am acquaintances, and maybe they've shared some things with me, but nobody I'm really significantly connected to or close to on a daily basis type of situation that would say that they've talked to their spirit guide and they're at peace with it.
Right, right.
They seem to be just, and they know how to harness that awareness and that energy and be used as a tool for the reason why they even have that awareness. And I want to feel that, and I conceptually, intellectually in my head can understand it, but when it seems to the magic, like you call it magic, happens, I need to shift that because I don't have that peace about it like so many others do, like you do, for example. You're excited by it, you call it magic. I feel it and I want to run and hide, and I'm not sure why.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. All right. So, and that's very powerful. Let's talk about anxiety and worry and stress. Okay. Now, why do most people feel anxiety and worry? Like, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but with my sister, for instance, she was on an anxiety medication, and we went into this in real detail. And I asked her, well, why are you all worried and anxious, like particularly in relation to her job? She said, well, because if I don't worry, how am I going to be sure I'm going to be doing a good job? And how am I going to be sure I'm taking care of things that I need to take care of, and how I'm going to remember what I do and all this. So to her, and for all people really, worry and anxiety is connected to being good in some way. It's seen as part of a necessary mechanism of being good, that you need to worry and be stressful because otherwise you aren't being good about what you need to be good about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my anxiety and worry is connected to spirituality,
Right.
honestly. It's not connected to the
Right,
mundane.
right, right. But it doesn't matter in what you worried or spiritual about. The reason that you worried is because you are trying to be good in some way, and you don't want to make mistakes, or you don't want to be like egotistical, or you don't want to be stupid about things, or you don't want to take things for granted. So that's what you're worried about. You're worried about not doing certain things that aren't good. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make
Right.
sense? So, in other words,
Yes.
the worry is an application of your goodness in some way. Now, what I'm trying to say is, instead of being worried and instead of being anxious, why not just turn that a little bit? Just make a slight shift and shift it to being cautious. What's the difference between being worried and having anxiety, and being stressed and being cautious? When you actually do the actions, isn't it exactly the same thing when you're being cautious? Except when you're being cautious, you're actually doing something constructive. Now you're looking at things, you're being careful, you're being thorough, you're examining it, you're being prepared, you're making preparations, you're looking at the overview perspective, so you can be strategic, you're getting stuff sorted out, you're paying attention to what needs to be paying attention. Isn't that all positive stuff? That's really wonderful and awesome.
Yep.
And doesn't that make your goodness say, oh, I'm doing stuff that's really good, but I'm doing my goodness now in a positive way rather than doing it through worry and anxiety, which is a negative way? We can just do the exact same things, just do it with a positive flavor, which is caution instead of stress and worry and anxiety.
Right.
So you're just being, in other words, what you call worry and anxiety is actually simply being impeccable, but in doing it with an inappropriate mood. Do the exact same things, just shift the mood and understand that when you think you're worrying and being anxious, you're actually being impeccable. You're testing, you're checking, you're verifying, you're being scrupulous, you're not assuming, you're not taking things for granted, you're not just jumping in willy-nilly. You're being cautious, you're being sensible, you're being strategic, you're being all sorts of wonderful things, right? You're acting with
Right.
sobriety. Those are all positive qualities. So all you have to do is just shift that internal pressure to be good into doing that same goodness, but just doing it with a positive mood. Because that's what worry is. Worry is inappropriate application of goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It got my sister off medication. She'd been on medication, I don't know, for like decades. And just this shift, when we worked through it and she realized that, wow, my goodness, you know
Could
what?
you
Say
say
again?
that sentence again? Inappropriate application.
Application of goodness. Worry or anxiety or stress or botheration or any of those things typically are just simply inappropriate application of goodness.
Wow.
Yes, wow, it's huge. It is huge, 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 huge. And just incredible, and so we have to understand why good people worry, because they think they should. They think they need to worry because if they didn't worry, they believe, well, that would mean I don't care. Is that actually true?
No.
No, because you can be cautious and you can be impeccable, which is doing the exact same thing. But now suddenly, from being a worry pot and an anxious person, you now suddenly become a powerful agent of the universe, a spirit warrior, right? Because you're being impeccable. How awesome is that? Just simple shift, no? That's why that
Yeah.
self-conception is so powerful. So next time you get into these situations, think of yourself. Say, hey, Donna, forget what you've been doing all these years. What would you do as a warrior agent of the universe? How would you behave? You would behave impeccably, right?
Right.
And strategically. Well, there you go. Life is easy. I mean, it really is that simple. And our brains and our psychology works that way. As a warrior agent of the universe, I'm entitled to do all sorts of things which I don't necessarily feel I'm entitled to do as Sil or as Donna. Yeah?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, in jobs, you might be aware of this, I would imagine. But the most important when people apply for a new job and there's a negotiation involved, the most important thing that gets negotiated is the title, not the salary, the title.
Mm.
That's the number one thing. That's the most important thing to people is the title. Because as whatever your fancy title is, it enables you and empowers you and leverages you. And well, of course, they do it for status and ego, but they also know there's great power in a title because it's a self-conception. Same thing. So we're just putting a more universal title on our things that's broader than obviously just a work thing. We have our titles of being, warrior agent of the universe. Very powerful title, isn't it? But it's
Yeah.
more than a title. It's a self-conception, which is where the power comes from. It's a way of being and a way of living, yeah?
Yes.
Very,
It
very
is.
powerful. So when you get into these spots of doubt like that, simply say, hey, what would I do as a warrior agent of the universe? And I like that warrior agent that you introduced, warrior dash agent of the universe. I love that. I love that. That's very cool. Very big shift. But to get back to that worry and anxiety, when we understand that they're inappropriate applications of our goodness, we're trying to be good, in other words, but being good in a crappy and a silly way and a conditioned way. But we can just turn it around and say, hey, instead of worry and anxiety, I'm going to turn it into caution and go one step further and turn it into impeccable. Because really what you want to do is you're being thorough, you're being strategic, you're being careful, you're being scrupulous. Let's see, let's look at all the things here in terms of all those things. You're being deliberate, right? And you're acting with resolve. You're being thoughtful. You have diligence, persistence, thoroughness, scrupulous, determination, all of the stuff, patience, right? All discipline, all of that stuff, all comes into, discernment. It's all part of your impeccability, right?
Right.
So isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Okay.
It really is.
Donna, the other thing is though, as a spirit warrior, as a warrior agent of the universe or spirit warrior, where do we get our missions from?
Mm.
I'm asking very seriously, where do we get our missions from?
Well, they don't from ourselves, from myself,
Right, from
from
the spirit,
inside
from
me.
from spirit, from the universe, from nature, from whatever you want to, from the world, right? From the bigger thing, in other words. We get them from
Yeah.
outside of ourselves in a sense, right? From the biggerness of ourselves. When you say from ourselves, yes, but from our like deep self, from our higher self, yes? That's
Yeah.
that's
It's
where we get
me.
our missions
Here.
from.
Right.
Right. I mean, when we're a warrior agent of the universe, by implication, we're getting our missions from the universe, right? Because that's what we're
Right.
about. We're about the big picture. We're about spirituality. So we could say, a warrior agent of spirituality. We want to say that too. Yeah. Same thing, pretty much. Universe, spirituality, all the same thing in it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at it that way, say, oh, hey, wait a second. Now I'm on a mission, but I'm actually getting my instructions and my mission. It comes from the universe. That's a whole different deal, isn't it?
It is.
It changes everything, doesn't
It does.
it? So if we say, hey, what is your universal mission? Spirituality.
What does that mean?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. So your mission is to be spiritual. Didn't you say when we were going through those wants and desires, when you looked at all of them and you said, you know what, they're all important, but they all connected to spirituality.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, the universe is saying, wow, your mission is to connect to spirituality, to be more spiritual, to be in more tune with spirituality. Everything revolves around spirituality. So the universe, because the universe is so awesome and your higher self is so incredibly, fantastically awesome, it kind of knows everything, the universe. So it says, wow, you know what? Let's make this really awesome, very easy mission. We're simply going to take and say, every single little thing in your life is actually spiritual or connected to spirituality. It's just up to you to make that connection and to basically use whatever you have for the purposes of your mission, which is to be more spiritual. How easy a mission is that? And fun. You see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to shift the view of the world, in other words, to look at the world in a different way, to say every single little thing is there for a reason, and not only a regular reason, but a good reason. And that reason is our intent and our purpose and our mission, which is awareness, spirituality, attunement, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing in the end, right? It's all
Right.
there for our benefit, to help us to be more of what we want. Every single thing. Okay, so let's take some specific things that you mentioned. Take this issue of divorce, right?
Right.
All right. So now we say this divorce is putting pressure on you. Okay. So this is like where the agent is out in the field and they're working, and it's like you can almost say that this is like a mystery they have to solve, or it's like a villain they have to deal with. Same thing. Something that they have to deal with. They can either do it with fun or with stress. Either way, that's up to them. Depend on the agent. I like the agents like in the old days with James Bond. He always seemed to be having fun with whatever he did, right? And then when he did
Right.
encounter the villains, he didn't like rail and get all stressed and like, at the hell with you, and no, he was always gracious and very civil and courteous with the villains, right? It was very strategic when he was dealing with them, because it prolonged the time, right? And
Yeah.
so he basically had a good time in doing what he did. He acted with impeccable strategy and sensibility. He didn't like the more modern heroes where when they get captured they're all fighting. It's like, man, chill out, relax. And through that they created time and space, and they could find a way out and all that. Anyway, I'm trying to say we can be that same kind of an agent where we have fun with everything. Doesn't matter how much of a villain you are, we're going to use you. We're going to get value out of you. We're going to maximize it, and we're going to figure out how to deal with this. And through that, we're going to transform it. Because inevitably, like with James Bond, wasn't it the villain's assistant that always kind of came and let them out and, changed that, where they were serving the villain, they had this change of heart, and then they fell in love with James Bond and they set him free and all that, right? So, but that
Right.
was because he was being gracious and considerate, and he wasn't acting like a jackass. In other words, so he turned the situation through his way of being. But anyway, I get carried away a little bit. I see a lot of spirituality in James Bond. But anyway,
No, I totally get that.
right,
I
right.
totally can see that.
Right, right. I mean, he was always impeccable too. I mean, there's a lot. We can really get into the James Bond movies at some point. We may even watch one together. But anyway, it's very fun, and same with Columbo too. At any rate, the point I'm
Oh,
making is
but
that,
you're right.
right. We'll get into that. We've got a whole session just on the life detective, and that's very much
Yeah.
connected to Columbo. I love it. I love it. Very powerful. So we're
Well, the
saying, hey,
divorce happened a long time ago, for example.
say
The
again.
divorce happened my divorce
Right,
happened a long time
right,
ago.
right. I don't think
And
it's.
and
Oh,
and the things that come up in conversation were how I used to be, which is totally opposite of how I am sitting here today.
okay, right. And that's what I felt when you said about divorce. I don't think it is your old divorce which is the issue necessarily, but the concept of divorce and the implications associated with it from then and now. For instance, just exactly that that your old self and yourself now are two different people, but you're being held to your old self in some way by some people. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
People don't know me.
right.
They
So do
don't. My own
right.
kids, for example, don't know me.
Right. So do me a favor. Whenever from now on, shift the word divorce and substitute the word transition instead of divorce.
Okay.
That's it. Now, whoever you talk to your kids on the internet, anyway. Instead of using the word divorce, use transition. So say, well, you know what? When I was young, I transitioned from this particular relationship, which was legally binding relationship and even religiously binding relationship, and we transitioned into a different type of a relationship. He went his way and I went my way, and that's how we transitioned. And I'm quite happy. At the same time, I also transitioned into being a different person. You see, now you're bringing this concept of transition, and I'm constantly in transition. You're making the point that, hey, I'm not the person from then. Plus, my divorce isn't this negative, shameful, dramatic thing which is implied with divorce. No, I transitioned, which by implication is kind of smooth. It's like not a problem, right?
Right. And I
Just
can do that same thing with the fact that if the the belief that the divorce, how that impacted my three children.
right, right, exactly. It was a transition. All right. So let's get into this thing with the divorce. We'll have a little therapy session. I like therapy sessions. They're great fun. everything is
Okay.
everything is fun, Donna, if we choose to make it so. Why?
Right.
Why? Because it's learning and growing, isn't it?
It is.
Do you like learning and growing?
I do very
Yeah,
much.
exactly. I love it too. So it's all fun. It's the best fun. Okay.
Okay.
So let's look at the divorce in more details. My parents went through a divorce at age 10, and that divorce lasted a couple of decades. It was a whole big messy thing. It was a very big drama. It was a big scandal at the time. They're probably still talking about it, actually. It was a huge, huge deal at the time. Anyway, so I understand about divorce. And I don't know where you were at the time, but at that time you couldn't even say the word divorce in polite society. It was like this big scandal, negative thing. Like if you got divorced, it was like a stain on your character or something. There was something wrong with you if you got divorced. It was a bad thing to do, blah blah blah, all that shit, right?
Right.
And that's part of the Catholic upbringing. They have that whole connection to it all as well, right?
Right.
Okay. So if divorce, typically I've found, if divorce is still an issue for people, it's because they have some residual shame and guilt connected to the divorce. I wasn't good enough. What was I did? What did I do wrong? Was it the right thing to do? Was it right for the kids? Did I maybe do things that were bad for the kids? Blah, blah, blah. All the stuff, right?
Okay.
Okay, let's assume that it was at the time you made all sorts of mistakes and you were totally screwed up and you were stupid and you were a complete a-hole and a knucklehead and you did all sorts of horrible things. Are you still that same person now?
No.
Okay, so there was somebody else that did it in some past self and not the self of now. So what has that got to do with you now? Bugger all.
I think the connection is my children.
Okay, I understand. But even so, with your children, you may have done things at the time which might have had some sort of a negative effect on your children, but
Right.
but but at the same token, all right. So let me give it in a different context. When my parents got divorced, I was 10 years old at the time, and it was a big drama. It really like all hell broke loose on one night. Because I now have to tell you the whole damn story because otherwise it's not going to make much sense. So we
All
had
right.
this big house. And it used to be an old boarding house. It was kind of an older house, and because my father's a doctor, he bought this house because at those times the doctors had their own surgeries, and you like on the same premises. A lot of them had a surgery on the same property, right, where they lived, so that people could come after hours. It's a different time and a different world. So anyway, so he had the surgery on the one side of the house. It was this big U-shaped house, and we would live in the other house. But then, my parents, the story for us kids is, oh, well, he's going to take a room closer to the surgery because he's going to be closer to his patients. The typical bullshit that parents say, but really they were being separated, obviously. So anyway, so he has this house, this room on the one side of the house, and, we're living in the other side. So one night, my brother is living in the back end of this. It's like this big U-shaped house, right? So the surgery on the one side, and my brother's got a room at the tail end of it. And he has a stomach ache, and he goes to this room where my father is, which is kind of sort of in the middle. And there are two rooms in between, and then the big living room, and then the rest of the house. Anyway, so he hears these voices in the room, and he says, what's going on in there? Oh, no, it's the radio. And my father says, my brother says, no, that's not the radio that I heard. So
Hmm.
he's coming through the surgery, then the waiting room, and then this where my father's bedroom there, where he was now staying. So in the waiting room, they had like antiques that they collected and stuff. And one of them was the big beam thing that you use on an ox wagon, the heavy pole in the middle that you use to connect the oxen with. So they had this as an antique, an old one there. So he uses this thing as a battering ram and he breaks down the door.
Oh, geez.
He's 14 years old now. Why in the hell he would do that? I don't know. It kind of amazed me at the time. Anyway, so obviously he finds my father in there with his mistress, right? he's having he's screwing with the mistress. That's what my brother heard, obviously. Yeah. So of course, then he goes through to the rest of the house, and then this is where I woke up with all the screaming coming and happening, with my mother freaking out, and it's under the same roof and in my house, and she's freaking out. She's her self-importance is completely off the charts because both of my parents, they're both narcissists in their own way, or not in their own ways, they're like totally into that ambition and status and how people look and appearance and all this crap and nonsense. And I always knew that from the earliest memory. Anyway, so there's this big drama going on. To make matters worse, as time goes by, it turns out that the mistress is like one of the town prostitutes. Just for add more drama to the whole thing. I'm saying this because I want to illustrate I'll get to it in a moment. So to make matters worse, my father ends up marrying her and he buys her this Corvette. Actually buys her the Corvette even before they get married. So that's why I said it's this huge, huge, massive scandal in the town, right? And he kind of rubs it in people's faces too on top of it. But at that time of that night when that whole big calamity went, they sent me to my room with my sister who's like a year and a half younger than me. And so I get into the room and I like sit myself down. And I even thought at the time, that's kind of an interesting thing to do because that was my thought at the time, to sit myself down. Like, okay, this is something serious. I got to kind of deal with it. So I sit myself down and I say to myself, this is either going to make you or break you. In those exact words. And I never heard them before ever. I don't know where they came from. And it sort of amazed me at the time too. Wow. Oh, okay. All right. And so I made the effort to have the whole issue be something positive to me rather than to be negative. Right? I shifted my perspective and attitude. And ever since then, that divorce was one of the best things that ever happened in my life because I leveraged it to raising my awareness, to making me more strategic, to making me more impeccable. All sorts of wonderful things came from that because of that shift of perspective. That's the point I'm trying to make. And the other point is my siblings did not do that. So at that time, I had my older sister, then my older brother, then me, and then my younger sister, and then my mother was actually already pregnant at that time, which was already interesting. She got pregnant just before they started separating. So now I have the fifth sibling. So at any rate, so there's four of us at the time, and the other three, they all the divorce is this big drama, and they have self-pity, and they're all messed up by the drama. It's all just in the attitude and the perspective. We all experience the same shit, except for them, it messed them up, and for me, it was this wonderful positive thing. Why? Because I made that shift. That's all. Who knows why I made the shift, but I did, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Just because things are supposedly all stress and drama and negative, it doesn't necessarily they mean that they actually are. In other words, I wouldn't change one single thing in my life. I absolutely would not change the fact that my parents got divorced. That was a profound boon and a blessing and an awesomeness to me in my life. So how your children react to your transition, that's up to them.
Right.
It's not you. You can only do what's right and what you believe to be right at the time, and you can only do the best you can. So what? It turns out that it wasn't the best. Maybe. Who knows? Now, my mother could say she anguished about this divorce thing just like after that. It was this big issue. Yes, but what about the kids? And I want to stay together and she went, every phone call with her friends was the same bloody nonsense all the time. And it's like eventually she said, well, I sort of have to. And it was like this big sigh because also, she didn't want to have this stigma of being divorced. So that was her main reason, but never mind. She used this idea of the kids. You can't know. You can only do what you believe to be right, and that's it. You can't know the effects of things. You have to trust sometimes that whatever you did was right. End of story.
Right. And I totally feel that. And it was probably from a soul growth opportunity, one of the hugest things that we went through.
There you
And
go.
I totally get what you're saying about my kids are on their own journey, and I handled things poorly. I said things I shouldn't have said. And I think that maybe that scenario I have to shift because I do still have a bit of sadness that because of that old person, even though I recognize there was
Right.
tremendous soul growth, and even though I recognize my ex-husband in those situations helped me the most probably than anybody else, and there was tremendous quote unquote pain and all that, there's still this like little bit of, when I see my kids, I don't think they know the new me. And
Right.
when
Right.
when I see things manifest in their world that I perceive was an outcome from that situation and the way I handled it, I still feel sad in my heart about that.
Got you. So that's what I'm about here. I'm about, well, let me go back to my screen share here, because it's about perspective shifting in order to make sense of things. That's what we're doing now. We're using this. We're going, well, we'll get to attunement in a way, but we're using appropriateness and awareness to perspective shift to make sense. Right?
Okay.
That's our application, taking this diamond, taking it and going the upward thing here, right? So we want to make sense of these things because they do make sense, and there is a bigger sense. We just have to zoom out. See, it's all at the very top there. So we want to zoom out and look at the bigger sense of it. All right. So let me ask you this, or let me make another scenario. If we just assume, as a hypothetical, just as if, just as a maybe, let's assume that we chose our birth circumstances deliberately, that we chose that, and we deliberately
Right.
chose the circumstance. Now, so I would have to say, in my circumstance, I chose to be born to parents who are both bullshit manipulated narcissists, which is what we've written our whole book about, Olivia and I, or one of the books. We've got lots of books. But anyway, the one we've written, the first
I
one we
can relate
published,
to that.
right.
I can
So,
relate to that.
right. So why would I choose to have, basically, they just, I mean, they kind of crappy people, my parents. Right. From my very first memory, I knew that. I knew that they were crappy and I wanted to have nothing to do with them. And I stayed as far away from them as possible. And I used them as basically they were an example for me, a very useful and profound example of what not to be.
Right.
So they might look back at their lives and say, you know what, let's assume they get into some kind of spirituality and awareness and look back. Man, I was a dickhead. I was an arsehole. I did stupid things. I was all into ego and status and ambition and appearances and all this bullshit. And I was a terrible parent, which they were. They were a horrible parent, which was good for me because they basically, as long as I was outside the house, I could do what the hell I want. When I was inside, my mother would always find shit for me to do. So I spent most of my time on my own outside, which really, I did all sorts of shit that I never really should have done. It was just terrible parenting, but I know it worked for me, so I'm happy. Another reason I chose them, I guess, what I'm trying to say is that we don't know how things affect people. Sometimes being a bad example is actually what's of value. So even though you may have acted poorly, in a way, you're showing your kids how not to be.
True.
Perspective shifting is very, very, very important. Now, did you ever do anything deliberately, consciously, in full awareness, in the overview perspective that you knew was going to be bad and mean or nasty or horrible?
No.
No, hell no. So there you go. You have to just trust. We lived in unawareness and we do things in unawareness. That's just fate. That's just life. Because even now we're in awareness, but our awareness now relative to the universe is very small, right? So we still don't know what we do if we're doing is the right thing. We can only trust. We can only do our best and keep trying to be better. That's all we can do. Yeah?
And what are we trusting? The universe.
There you go. There you go. And that's where we come to attunement. And I think we have to now switch to doing that session on attunement to know exactly what attunement is and how
Do
attunement
we
works.
dictate? Do we dictate like what we want, and then we take intent intentional steps to create that, or are we truly better served by just showing up every day in the moment and trusting that whatever happens in our life experience, the universe is controlling that? I'm
Right.
confused about that.
It's both. We are going to say we're going to do both because we are going to set our lives in the most strategic manner possible. And so we're going to get into this. So I think what we can do to answer your question is to go and do that session on attunement. So let me just go to the mind map again here real quick. and say, look, our attunement comes into things. Attunement, there's alignment, there's anomalies, there's the universal language, universal information, and through alignment we get to adventure, artistry, aspirations. And what's very important with attunement is this point here. You see, acting without agenda. When we act without agenda, when we start to live in attunement, we start to connect to agenda. In other words, a motivation that comes from outside of us, not from inside of us. And that's a very profound transformation. And that will all be explained in the session. But we are going to use attunement and then use the awareness and appropriateness to get those three. See, they all funnel into application. And from that, it's going to change how we not only think of ourselves, but how we actually are and our ways of living and our ways of being. That's what we want. We want it to translate into stuff that we can actually use and live, and thus to have the power from it, right?
Right.
Okay, so this point of attunement is really, really huge. And I think it's a big point for you. We're going to skip now. We're going to skip a whole bunch of modules to get to attunement. And a lot of times I think that, that sometimes I think we may have to start with attunement, but then we have that how it all makes sense as being the first module. So
it probably has to do with everybody's journey is so different, and where people
correct.
are in their
Correct.
understanding and application is so
different. Right, exactly. No, that's absolutely very important. So yes, where people are, it's very important, and that's why attunement is so powerful, and why the whole course is set up in a way. I'm just trying to open up the site. I want to show you something.
Well, when I'm in that, when I'm in my head and I'm not using my higher self as my guidance, it doesn't serve me well. And
exactly.
Like I did the other day, I had this whole conversation and ended this beautiful relationship, but with a person that connects with me on a higher level, because I just had so much fear and anxiety, and
right. And those are just legacy things.
I can't do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore.
No, there's no sense to it. I agree. Okay, so we have okay. Actually, not where I want to be. Am I on screen share right now? No, not. All right, I'm getting there. I'm just pulling up a site here real quick. I'll be there in a moment. I want to just show you the course in an overview perspective. Let's see. Here we go.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand exactly what you mean. It's just legacy stuff and habits of thinking and being, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. So it's the local now as opposed to the universal now, and that the module that I want to get to will resolve all of that. So I'll show you in a second.
And it's like an awareness
at
a very tiny level that there's a difference between the two, and you don't know where the bridge is.
Right.
That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me, and I'm going to shift that word frustration to something else.
Right. It's just habits and beliefs, and we're going to change those habits and beliefs and understandings. Okay, here we go. Let's go up. Back to screen share. Oh, I like that picture.
Yeah, that's very cool. I've seen that.
Yeah, I used it in a story that's part of this lesson. All right, so we look at module 1, establishing intent, and it's all about establishing intent, and this focus of purpose, and then some specific practice, how it all makes sense. But that how it all makes sense could kind of, you would think it's sort of could come at the end of things. So then we refine our self-conception, we do some specific things, and we do application, and through some more understanding and substantiating and verifying, then assimilating and incorporating, owning, and then we get to attunement. But we can also start with attunement and then do all of that. So this is where I want to jump right now. I want to jump to to attunement and to say this, what exactly attunement is. It's all, because here we have making sense of it all comes back in again, and intent and how it all works. So it's all putting it together. But we can start from the other end as well to have things make more sense. So that's what I want to do now. I want to go to this and then to go to where things make more sense. So to connect it to that, how things make more sense, is that's what I'm trying to say, in other words.
Okay.
And to connect to this idea of attunement, because it's going to bring in a very profound concept, and that's this concept of our own sensibility and our ability to trust our sensibility. And that's kind of where I feel that you're at, no?
Yes.
Okay, let's make this full screen, and you can see okay, right?
I can.
Okay. Okay. So attunement, alignment, and anomalies. Nice 3 A's. We love those A's. So I haven't put in all the pictures and stuff in this one yet. It's just bare bones at the moment, but it'll have to do. All right. So I'm going to read the story to you. The first part you can read after that, but this is actually from a little story. So I'll just read it to you. All right. So one day in a faraway land, a young man said to his heart, I have tried mightily to learn, to acquire wisdom. After all my studies of scriptures, texts, philosophies, literatures, and more, I have not found an answer. His heart asked sweetly, to what question? He pondered this as he had been, wanting to express himself clearly. This was dear to his soul. I
Boy,
want
can
to.
I to
Oh,
that?
please. Oh, sure. Say. Did you want to say something?
I just said, boy, can I relate to that? Because you
Right.
go through all these things. You go through speech therapy, and you go to, meditation, and you listen to this webinar, and you go to this spiritual healer, and you try
Right.
tapping, and you try yoga, and you try meditation. And then, right?
I laugh
That's,
because all of Sedona where we are, it's all that stuff, right? We
I
try to cut
know.
through all of that, and this answers that question to a
Oh my gosh.
very powerful way, right? Because that's exactly to what question, right? And
Right.
the issue, what the young man is all about here, it's something very deep and profound, dear to his heart, right? He's done all that searching in the same way, but it says, I have not found an answer, right?
Right.
All that
Right.
searching, he had not found an answer. All right, so let's stick with the young man here. He's going somewhere with us, or the two of them and his heart, right?
Right.
I want to live right. I want to be sure I am making good decisions. But all the learning in the world cannot ensure my choices are appropriate. In the short term, they may seem fine. Longer term, it is hard to know. The same with context. I have come to understand clearly my knowledge is limited and will always be limited. He considered his own words carefully. It is this limitation of knowledge which concern me. Knowledge is not information, and neither of these are wisdom. The dream of self wisdom is flawed. His heart understood. She always understood. She waited, keen to hear more. Dreams were delicate, especially when they transitioned. New dreams required tender care. Each was the other's dream. Now they would become one dream. The young man continued earnestly, unless I am conceited, and I fear this daily, I cannot ever be sure of my decisions. I know they are flawed or likely to be in the long term. This is my concern, not for the decisions of the here and now, but for my life decisions. His heart responded, yes. How can we know what is best for us when we cannot conceive of what could be best? She watched the young man carefully. His sincerity seemed to make him sad. He continued, I am committed to modesty. I am committed to humility. I refuse to fall prey to self importance. I refuse. And I refuse to be limited by my own decision making ability. I cannot continue any longer in this way. I have to change. Will you change with me, dear heart? This was a matter they could only undertake together. They were one heart. She had already changed. Yes, I will. I will embrace a new way of living. We cannot honestly continue in this way if we are serious about our path. Our decisions are limited. She looked at him, open to solution. I have given this much thought, he said, somewhat obviously. Since we cannot trust any decisions made with limited information, we need access to universal information. I intend to look outside myself for answers. I am too limited. I will look to the universe for answers. The universe has access to universal information. He stopped here. So much was still unsaid. All right. It's a start. There's more to that story. I can't read it all. I didn't want to put it all in because it's quite longer, and it makes me very emotional. That story, it's a very powerful story for me. But anyway, so it's the setup to bring us to attunement, right? That's the point of that story, because that's what they did. They started to live in attunement because they said, "Hey." And from the young man's deep understanding, he said, I can't just live by my own decisions only because I know those to be flawed. So I don't know what the alternative is, but I know I can't continue in this way. So I'm going to look for an alternative, right?
Right.
That makes sense? Okay. So it makes me emotional too. It's a very emotional story. I'll send you the whole story, and you can read the whole of it. It's a very powerful story. It's actually a true story too, by the way.
Is it really?
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you wait one moment? I need to get a
Oh,
tissue.
problem. I'm the same way. The story makes me emotional too. That's why I'm laughing.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I was going to get the story
Oh, I
for you.
lost you.
Ah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a powerful story. So it's a story of earnestness. And it is this. That's why I put it in there. Because, you and most of the people that do the course, they have that same earnestness. They want to live right. They want to know how to live right, but they struggle because they've looked and searched and done all the stuff, and still it doesn't really help them any. Yeah?
Right.
Right. So this is where we come to attunement. So we're going to jump a little bit and then go through it all, and it will kind of all tie together and make sense. So attunement is positioning ourselves to be in the best place to most appropriately take advantage of the forces and energies of the world. Attunement is working with life instead of against it, or just randomly being moved by whatever comes our way. It's the difference between surfing life's waves or getting dumped or bowled over by them. Does that help somewhat in the
Yeah.
understanding of attunement?
Yep.
For survival, being attuned to the rhythms, patterns, energies, and workings of the jungle is imperative. Just as in our work or business, it's most advantageous to be attuned to the economy and politics and so on. Let me just, while I'm about it here, do some editing. There we go. As spirit warriors, we take this further. Go in all the way. Our aim, since our intent is a maximum intent, is to attune to absolutely everything. We insist on attuning to life itself, to spirit, to the universe. This is the ultimate, and if our intent is geared to our life context, we can do no less. Right?
Right.
In other words, we can't just be attuned to our work and to the neighbors and to our kids and all that stuff. Yes, it's important, but there's a greater importance. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Does everybody understand this?
I don't know. I haven't got to this with most people, but yes, when we do go through it, they do, yeah, because we explain it. And, when you really get down to it, it's sort of, again, it's obvious that we're making obvious, right?
Right.
Operating,
True.
and it doesn't matter if they do or not. The issue is whether you do. And me.
Right.
So, operating from the profoundness of appropriateness is our root conception. How can we not attune to life itself? We have to, because we want to make sure our actions are appropriate in the immediate, long term, and in the absolute overall of everything. We attune because, like the young man, if we are honest, and if we are also humble. We have to acknowledge our decisions are going to be limited in the larger context as we simply do not have access to the information needed. Attunement connects us to access of that universal information and ways to leverage the overall. Attunement is grand sensibility. It's expanding our awareness to the rhythm, pattern, and flow of life itself so we can be maximally appropriate. Alignment. Alignment is once we've positioned ourselves via attunement, we actually make specific usage of life's forces and energies. We actually catch the waves of life we've positioned ourselves to be in place to catch. Attunement is being aware of what's out there. Alignment is actually taking action to use what's available. Alignment is application thus, because of course, without application, it's all meaningless. So a little story here to illustrate. If you've ever watched surfers, right? And they go out beyond the breakers and they're sitting at the back there waiting for the swells. And you kind of see them paddling one way and then you see them paddling another little way, right?
Right.
And what they're doing is they're attuning to the swells, because the swells aren't all the same. It may look that way if you're not a surfer, but they're actually very different. And they come in sets and they come in patterns and they don't always break at the same place. So in this context here, we're looking at those waves in the same way they're just energy, right? So what the
Right.
surfers are doing when they paddle this way and this way, when they're sitting out there, they're not just sitting out there. They're actually watching. They're in tune with the whole sea and the ocean. They, in other words, in attunement. And that's what they're doing when they're positioning. They're attuning to the swells, to the energies that are coming their way. And they are positioning themselves to be in their best place to actually be able to catch the wave, right? Because the waves break in different places. If you're in the exact right spot, you have to do very little paddling to actually catch the wave. So that
Right.
the act of catching the wave, that's alignment, right? Now,
Yep.
when actually catching the wave and surfing it, that's when you're in alignment. You're using the energies of the world, and that's what we do for attunement. Attunement is all about being aware of what those energies are and positioning ourselves to be able to be in the best place to take use of them, right? Kayaking. You like kayaking, I'm assuming, right?
I've never done it, but
Oh,
I want
okay.
to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
you can imagine if you're in that river and your intent is to, okay, I want to go down river at maximum speed, the best I can. You're going to be in the heart of the flow, in the depth of it, and that's where you're going to be sitting, and you're going to be attuning to the deep flow of the river, right?
Right.
What do you have to do? People think just going with the flow is this kind of mindless thing where you're just like a tumbleweed flowing in the wind, and no, it's not, because if you just went with the flow, you're going to wash up on the first bank in the river, right? The first turn.
Right.
Because
Right.
you have to make a little bit of effort to stay in the flow. You have to paddle a little bit because you're going to drift out. And, like I said, the first corner, you're going to get washed up. So it takes a little bit of energy to stay in the maximum flow. Now, if you want to go slowly down the river, it's like a wild river, you're going to be more on the side of the river. Again, you're going to attune to what's appropriate. Yeah?
Right.
You're going to make those appropriate efforts. All right, there you go. Very simple attunement. And alignment, very simple. So attunement is being aware of what's out there and positioning yourself. Alignment is actually taking advantage of it. So that paddling is, also alignment, but it's also attunement. All right, so now we come to the key thing, anomalies, and we've already spoken about what anomalies are, right?
Right.
So anomalies are like these clues from the universe. And they're ways that we can figure stuff out. They're ways to draw our attention. They're ways to leverage us. They're ways to make us learn and think about stuff. So I'm not going to read through all this yet to get to anomalies. But, because we already went through all of this. I want to get to the last part here. Okay, so acting without agenda. Since we know we are limited and we don't know everything and are nincompoops in relation to the universe, our profound humility and self-honesty forces us to be aware of our personal motivations and agendas. Forces us to be aware our personal motivations and agendas are limited. So we do the only thing we can do. We don't have any, and switch to attuning and aligning to universal agenda. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know my personal agendas, they are based on, legacy crappy stuff. Well, I've got to be
Right.
important. I've got to be sensible. I've got to be like,
Got
fitting.
to worry
uh,
about
All,
retirement
ex-
and
exactly. All the shit, right? Or I've got to
right.
fit in and I've got to look after my kid. All those personal agenda stuff. I know as a nincompoop, I know those are just inappropriate, right? And also when it comes to my soul lessons, to my spirituality, how do I know what's best for me? I don't, right?
Right.
So I have to look for I can't trust my own agendas because I know they're limited. So I have to say, hey, I'm going to switch to attuning and aligning to universal agenda. In other words, as a warrior agent of the universe, I'm now getting my missions not from mission control, which is my ego and my normal usual little local self. No, I'm saying I know
Right.
you're crappy. Sorry, I need to go to a higher authority. I want super missions. I don't want crappy missions anymore. So
Right.
I go to the universe for my missions. And how do I get those? So all right, so I switched to going from going acting on personal agenda to acting on universal agenda. So this switch is also the switch to deep and profound joy, because how can universal agenda not be magical, awesome, incredible, be more, always more? How can universal agenda not be right in the full totalness? It has to be. Yeah,
Right.
initially we need some suspension of belief temporarily. We need to accept without accepting and trust without trusting that such is the case. We do this and go out into the world and simply test this massive idea. Soon enough, we'll experience the awesome. So, yeah, initially we might have to suspend our belief a little bit, but then we get to actually testing it. So, it's a very simple little thing. It wraps up the whole course because we were, throughout the course, we'll have talked all about this stuff. Um, and then we say our abilities are not a limitation when encountering the ineffable. Only our impeccability to ride the moment counts. So that's kind of a nice little summary too. Just to, and remember that. But we won't go into the lessons here because that can come later on. The point of all of this that I'm trying to make is this way of living that's different to the usual way of living. Most people, their way of living is based on their agendas, what they think they should do, not what comes from outside of them in the bigger picture. And that's what gets them into trouble, because their idea of what they should do is limited. Not only is it limited, even if they don't take their should from convention and from society and from all of that stuff, even if they just take it from themselves, their should is still built on their personal understandings, their personal knowledge, all the things that they know, which is limited. And that's like the young man. He said, look, I've literally studied all the scriptures, all the philosophies, all the religions, everything, all
Right.
literature, and still it means bugger all.
Right.
Yeah, I still
I can
know.
relate.
Right. I mean, I still know all that learning relative to the all of the universe. It's a very, very tiny little fraction, right? Very, very insignificant. It doesn't mean
Right.
anything. So that's why we're making this shift. So now we say, okay, what does this mean in practical reality when we say we make this shift to living in attunement with the universe? We're saying, how do I get my missions? I don't have any agenda now. I'm taking my motivation, my agendas, my desires. I'm simply taking it because of the force of circumstance, because of how life pressures me, what comes at me. I'm going to assume that whatever comes into my life is there for a purpose and a reason, and I've got to deal with it. That's my mission, right? Is to learn.
Right.
Very simple. So I get my learning through not just force of circumstance, what's pressuring on me, my life situation, how the world's working around me, but also in very particular issues, like when mission control of the universe says, "Hey, you know what? I got a special thing for you here. We've got to like interrupt your mission, and we got to kind of update you. We got a real particular little side quest for you to do." Okay, then anomalies. That's how they would communicate with us, right? Universe mission control. That's how they update our missions and tweak it and give us very specific instructions, is through the anomalies. For the rest, we're just responding to life and life forces and life circumstances and the pressures inside us. So one of the things is if something is unresolved in us because we're living as a agent or as a warrior, we have to deal with stuff to resolve it, because otherwise it just drains our energy, right?
Right.
So it's very simple to know what to do. When we don't have a personal agenda anymore, we just deal with whatever comes our way, and we learn from it, and we grow, and we say, hey, this is a pressure in my life. I got to deal with it. So, all right, so let's get back to the thing with the divorce, and let's go into that more specifically and look at how this is putting pressure on you. So tell me more.
Um, tell you more.
How would we come to make peace with this thing of divorce in your life? That's what we want to do. We want to come to resolution. We want to understand it, and we want to make peace with that whole whatever is connected to divorce in whatever way, because obviously it has some legacy unresolvedness for you. You're not fully at peace with it as yet, right?
Must not be because it keeps coming up. And it usually tells me I'm not, even if I think I am.
Right. Like in what way does it come up? Give me a few
In,
examples.
in conversations and in just like themes. And during the conversations, it's like the person is literally talking about me. And if I was really being honest with my feelings, I'd be like, yep, how'd you know that I really feel that way, even though I tell myself, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
deep down. Okay, so the divorce. The long and short of it, it was a very ugly theme beyond just myself and who I was married to. It involved a child of mine. And I behaved in a way that protected that child. And if I were to be truly honest, I wouldn't do anything different. I know I would behave the very same way. And in that process of protecting that child, I behaved so poorly. And my heart was full of hatred, revenge. Anybody that would listen to me, I was just negative energy. And I badmouthed my ex-husband, and I felt with every ounce of my being he was evil and narcissist and yada yada. Okay, so that's the background. So forward, that was 2005. Forward after that happening, an awakening process. And I'm to the point now that I forgive him and I've asked him to forgive me. And I truly look at him with love in the respect of a lot of my soul growth were situations where he was involved in that. And even though I don't say, oh, you're the one that created this change in me, that's not what it was. I had experiences where he was involved in, and that experience that he happened to be in created the soul growth and expansion. And I truly am grateful
Yes.
for that.
Yes. He was a
I
gift of
really,
learning.
yes.
Right.
And I see it as that. Here's where the challenge comes. Through that whole process, there was so much hatred and resentment and all those things when you're in the dark, when you're just not aware at all and you're not
Yes.
in alignment and we're
Yeah.
nothing like
Exactly.
what we're talking. Okay. So that being said, my mom was also a part of this divorce and is still unresolved in that I loved my mom, but truthfully, in the last couple months, being a narcissist, and I feel like I've questioned if I was, because I used to say those same things about my ex-husband and my mom, and I'm like, was
I don't
that
mean.
really me? Well,
Yeah.
maybe I was the one that was one, but I think I was the empath, not the
Right.
narcissist.
Right.
So anyway, so she's passed, and I've just recently recognized that we fed each other hatred, and there was this loop
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
and I just duplicated what she did.
Yes.
I made my husband out to be the person that was the bad guy. I was the victim. My mom did the
Right.
exact same thing. She alienated us three against my dad, yada,
Yeah.
yada.
Yeah.
It's got to stop here. And when I recognized that the other day, it brought that butterfly feeling of, no, this buck's stopping here. I don't want
That's
my next
fantastic.
generations to repeat this cycle. And
Right.
I am not that same person, and I am not going to let this happen to my kids. And yes, I'm stubborn as hell, and I am
I love it.
persistent, and I
I
am
love
resilient,
it.
but I'm going to use this for good, and this is going to end here. So I've done a lot of things, and I've had a lot of growth. And with my children, they are adults, so they've been out of the house through most of this journey of growth.
Hmm.
So when I interact with them, I don't feel as though they know who I am really. And the interaction has left a bridge there where the connection isn't there. And that still saddens my heart. So indirectly, it goes back to the divorce because that's when they saw me in
Right.
those situations that were less
Gotcha.
than ideal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm fully aware that that impacted them as people.
Right.
You know, when you
Right.
see your mom behaving in such
Oh yeah.
inappropriate
Oh yeah.
ways,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
All right.
So
So write in your
that's what it
dictionary of
is.
power for me, please. Nice big gift of learning, or gifts, plural. Gifts of learning. That's the concept. Gifts of learning.
Okay.
All right. So this is a very powerful concept. So now we're going to look at your entire divorce as a gift of learning. Your ex was a gift of learning. Your mother was a gift of learning, right? Your behavior
Right.
was a gift of learning. Okay.
Right.
When you look back at everything now as a gift of learning, what did it do? It made you profoundly and acutely aware of your capacity and your ability to be crappy.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? Because you became acutely aware of it through that. Because it was the excess of it allowed you to see it for that it was actually a part of you, and a part of you that you don't want to be. Not that it is a real part of you, but it's a way that you could behave simply because you didn't know any better and because you were following a pattern, right?
Right.
So that
Right.
gift of the divorce allowed you to break the pattern. And that is huge, 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 huge. When you decided to break that pattern, not only did you make the decision to get out of negativity, but you also, at that moment in time, you made the decision to develop your own independence of being. Another power conception. Put that also in the dictionary. Independence of being with hyphens and capitalized. You know, independence and being capitalized. It's a very powerful concept, independence of being. It's what we're aiming for, it's what we're heading for. Because we don't want to be slaves of doing, oh, my mother did this, now I must also do it. This is the way people do things, I must do the same. No. And that's the profound lesson in this. The deep, deep, huge, universal lesson that comes out of it. Donna, you got to decide for yourself what is right and good. You can't just go by what the hell other freaking people think, yeah?
Right.
And you
And there's been a part of me that's very much always been that.
exactly. But that whole divorce made it absolutely clear as to how vitally, vitally, crucially, imperatively important that is, to have independence of being and not take your beliefs and ideas and how you should behave from other people, because you can end up being horrible just following should, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's a profound lesson. In other words, through that divorce, you became real Donna. Who was that Donna doing that? Was that a real person, or was that some basically like a movie put together, a fictional
It,
version? It's an artificial,
exactly.
right? The
That's
Donna
how I
then,
feel looking at it.
right?
It's like a movie. I can't even connect to that. I
Exactly.
don't even, yes.
Exactly. Donna then was not a real person. She was following her mother's pattern and society's pattern and what she should do and all this other shit, and it was all artificial. None of it was real, because none of it was what you really are and what you really feel and what you really think. You were simply doing things in this bubble of unawareness, which is frighteningly horrible.
Mm.
It's the
Yeah.
scariest thing to realize, that we can actually be in a bubble of awareness and do shit that's really terrible and horrible. Why? Because we're in this bubble of unawareness. Very
That's
scary.
right. It's
Very
very
scary.
scary and dark.
Right. But also powerful. Isn't it just fantastic though? Because yes, think of it this way. If it hadn't been for the pressure of the divorce and all that energy, you might not have come to the surface, and you could have just lived this conventional life of following the shoulds of society and be in your own little bubble of unawareness and lived that artificial life for the rest of your life and never woken up. How
It's
horrible.
very,
That's even more horrible.
It is.
That's like
It
a
was the
living death.
catalyst. Yeah.
Exactly. So that stress, that pressure, if you were to say, okay, let's assume like life is a game, and we're a game developer. I don't know if you've ever played games, but you have the programmers, they call them devs, developers, for short. Anyway, they like the gods of the game in a sense, and they can change the programming in the code of the game, and it affects how you play the game. All right. So you, this life developer or this life dev of your own life, and you're looking at Donna down there and say, you know what? Donna's kind of like in this little bubble. She's just kind of, going along. She's not doing anything really, but she's basically pretty much just conventional, and she's living this artificial life according to what she thinks she should do. And she's in a bubble of unawareness, and she's not really getting out of it. So what can we do to get out of it? Okay, let's get her hooked up with this guy, and put her in the situations, make her mother into a narcissist, and okay, we set this whole thing up to force this awareness to say, hey, you know what? We're going to put pressure on you to get out of your bubble. How awesome is that?
It's pretty awesome.
It's a necessary part of your spiritual growth and development.
And the outcome of the children in that doesn't even come into the puzzle because it's my growth, and they'll have their own growth from it.
Exactly. So now you as a life dad said, hey, you know what? I look at Saul's story. Man, for him, that trauma of the divorce made him into it made him as a person. It was vitally transformative. He took that and he used it to positive effect. So it's up to the kids how they're going to deal with it. Sometimes they come out good. No, we're putting this as a test for them. If they're going to deal with it crappily and get all bent out of shape, well, that's the lesson for them. They need to learn with that, or they can do it positively. That's kind of up to them. So none of these things are necessarily bad in themselves. It's all how we deal with it. Simple as that. So that divorce could either be seen as some traumatic thing that you're going to suffer from the rest of your life, or you can shift to seeing it as a gift. Your kids can do the same.
I
Right?
do see it as a gift. I
Okay.
truly do. That's been fairly recent.
Right.
It's the part that I think I'm still is like the how the impact that had on my kids. I still feel like
Yes, I hear you. All right. So I have a job for you, a task for you. So make a post in the group, and the title of the post, you can change it, but essentially the title of the post is "The Life Gift of My Divorce."
okay.
And then you write out what we've been talking about. You write out how your divorce was this profound, massive, wonderful, incredible spiritual gift that led to your awakening as a person and put you on a path to be more, and realize that you don't want to be just a crappy, unaware person living in this bubble of just following along in society and convention. In other words, how that divorce was this incredible, profound life gift of freedom.
It was.
Right. Write it from that perspective. And in that, then you send that same thing. Yes, post it in the group, or if you want to. I mean, I'd love it if you post it in the group. It would be very liberating, because when we make a public post, we're very sincere about our post and we stand behind it. So it leverages us, and there's an extra emphasis. So it puts it into our brain in a different way. So it's very powerful to do that. But then also send it to your kids and say, look, when I look back at it now, yes, I don't care for who I was then, and I don't ever want to be that way. And that wasn't the real me. And that's the point. I'm seeing the gift of it, the value of it. I'm learning from it. It made me aware that, hey, if I don't wake up, if I don't change my life, if I don't wake up to be a real person and choose for myself what I want, I can be this kind of a crappy person without any real choice on my behalf. And that's a horror which I do not wish on anybody. And I'm sharing with you this, with my children, and with everybody. Why? Because learn from my example to not repeat my mistakes. Or not, it's not even a mistake, to not repeat my life, not to repeat that pattern, not to get caught in that same trap of unawareness. Because it's not, I shouldn't say that learn from my mistakes, learn from my life, learn from my pattern, that, hey, don't follow that same pattern of unawareness. At some point, we have to claim our lives for ourselves, and we have to wake up and say, hey, what am I doing and why am I doing it? In other words, at some point, If you'd asked at that time during your divorce,
Mm-hmm.
if you'd said, how can I be impeccable over here? That would have changed the whole thing. Said, well, being full of hatred, that's not pretty impeccable. That's kind of a poor usage of energy, no? It would have
Right.
changed everything. Say, do I really want to do this? Is this really me? Is this have any value? Is this any beneficial? And so on. And you would have really thought about things. But at the time, you weren't actually thinking about anything. Why? Because you were caught up in behaving in ways of should and supposed to be. Yeah?
Yeah. There was no alternative to what I did in my mind at that time based on the
Precisely.
circumstances.
Precisely. In other words, you were in a bubble of awareness.
Right. Lack
Right.
of awareness.
Lack of awareness, bubble awareness, emotion awareness. Exactly. So that's the lesson. That's the lesson to say, hey, we got to look up, look out, expand our things, look at more options, look from the overview, look from the bigger picture. And when we do that, we say, now, when I'm my situation now, I say, what is it that I need to learn? When you look back at the me of then, through the eyes of the me of now, it's a profound big deal, right? Because you're saying, hey, me of then, you know what you should have learned? You should have learned to be independent. You should have learned to think for yourself. You should have learned to not act simply because of supposed to be, but because you actually want to, because there was a sensibility to it, because there was a bigger reason. Look at the bigger picture. You would have said, hey, is this something that I really, in my deep of my good heart that is trying to be good? Is this appropriate way to begin, or is this an inappropriate application of awareness? Your entire way of being and acting, all the things you did during that divorce, all of it was inappropriate application of goodness,
Mm.
wasn't it?
Yep.
When we say should, by implication, when we do what we should means it's the stuff that you have to do in order to be good. That's what should really means, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're doing stuff according to we should, we are trying to be good. Except the problem with should is that it's typically inappropriate because it's bubble awareness. So we understand that you were mean and hateful and nasty because you thought that was the right thing to do at the time.
It's true.
You were trying to be good in a horrible, inappropriate way, right? It was a really dreadful application of goodness, wasn't it?
Yeah, I justified it by feeling like I was protecting this child and my children. That's how I
Exactly.
justified it in my head.
Exactly. But it's not just justifying it. That was your bubble awareness. You thought, hey, this is what I should do in order to protect my child. So you were trying to be
Right.
good. You were trying to be good in a horribly inappropriate way. And that is the lesson. That is the soul lesson. That's what the universe was trying to get through to you. That's what you as a life dev, looking from the future was saying, hey, past self, this is what you need, or alternative self in a different universe, whatever you want to think of it, just as a mechanism for us to get perspective on it. That's what you need to learn. You need to learn and see that, hey, you can't just go by should. You have to think for yourself of what's really good and make sure and be impeccable and look at the full context of things, right?
Right.
All right.
Do you
So,
get to a point? Do you get to a point like I'm fully aware that I want to stay connected to my higher self, and my higher self has that grander vision of things that I won't see it as my little self or lower self or whatever word you use. I don't know that I always know. Like I say all the time, my intent today is to stay connected to my higher self, and no matter who I'm with or what I'm doing on this day, I'm going to maintain my happiness in that connection and be guided by that. But I don't always know if I am, and I feel like other people do.
no, I would say, it's very difficult to stay in full awareness all the time. It's a challenge, and it's something that there is a whole module that deals with exactly this, to change our habits and routines and to not get immersed in things. So yeah, it's a big part of it, and living with anomalies and all that. So as we go along, and we'll talk more about this, how to do exactly that, to live in more awareness and more fuller awareness. It's very profound. So as we resolve stuff, we free up energy. The more we resolve stuff, the more we free up energy, the more we have the ability to live in awareness. It's unresolved things that pull us into them.
I feel that.
I want to add one more thing. When you send that letter to your children, say, listen, I'm sending you this lesson not only for perspective and for awareness and to show you what I've learned from it and where I'm at and how I've grown. I also want you to take how I was and how you remember me then as an example of how not to be.
Yeah, I have said that before.
I'll repeat it in a letter because a letter is much different to just saying it to people.
Okay.
Very powerful when you put it. Yeah, a letter can be an email too, but it's very powerful when it's written out and people are seeing that because there's an earnestness and an energy and a power to it. And that's why I'm keen for you to make it as a post, because now you're making it as a public statement. But don't think of it as making that post to the public. Make that post to the universe.
Okay.
That's who you're making the post to. You're making that post to your higher self, which means you're being utterly, utterly, utterly honest, sober, sincere, earnest, genuine, and you're committed to the fullness of getting this thing expressed, right? Because you're saying it to the
Right.
universe. How can you say it in anything less than the fullness of it and the totality? And there's a power to that. When we make posts to the universe, it is incredibly powerful. It leverages us tremendously. That story of the young man, that was exactly what that was. It's a story to the universe, a post to the universe. It's very powerful. It leverages us. It changes us when we say things to the universe. You can't kind of say shit and bullshit to the universe and make a crappy post. You can't say, oh, this is going to make me look good or whatever. You can't have thoughts like that when you're making a post to the universe. It's just ridiculous, right?
Right.
It's very
You're right.
profound, very, very profound, simple mechanism for self change to make posts to the universe. All my posts, every single one of them, is a post to the universe. Every post I
Yeah.
make, always. It's for me to be more aware of myself, in other words, for me to get my shit sorted, because in our heads it's all over. We believe we understand, and then when we start to but when we write it out, that's when we get clarity, and that's what you're after, is clarity, right?
That is right.
Right. Very powerful, Donna. So when you now look back at that issue of your divorce, it's like, man, what a magical business.
Right. Right.
It was a magical business. I mean, truly, it was a quite magical business, because if you hadn't gone through that, and if you hadn't acted in those horrible ways, right, and you just stayed being the person before that, what kind of a life would you have had if that pattern just continued?
Just mediocre. Just gliding by.
Unaware, in a bubble, unconnected to spirituality, lost, in other words, and nothing life. It's an artificial life. It's not real.
Right. Right.
And you don't want that. And point that out to your kids too.
You don't want it. And
Hell
like
no.
this current relationship is different in that we do connect at a higher level, and the connection is so much different. And I do believe that it was a gift from the universe that that our relationship came to be. I do, with every ounce of my being. It's different than other relationships, and that I have to shift that too, because I literally self-sabotaged that. I'd self-sabotage a lot of things. So it's all perspective shifting.
Yes, yes. Everything is. I'm listening. I'm just going to put my kettle on. So I've got my cord is very long, you see, so I can walk around. I think I can get to the kettle from here. So I can hear you fine because you're on the speakers, not on the headset speakers. I just use the headset for the mic, so I hear you fine. I mean, I don't want to mean to be rude, but I need to make some coffee. I'm very thirsty. Donna, now when you were saying about gifts of the universe, right? We have to also understand that everything is a gift from the universe.
Right.
Absolutely everything. That's the whole magic of all of this. That's our biggest shift. When we live in attunement, we start to understand and realize that everything is a gift from the universe.
Okay.
Now, when you said perspective shifting, yes, that's the magic. That's actually our workshop we do in Airbnb, and I will add it to the course. Actually, it's a very profound, big, long workshop, and it's all about perspective shifting. And we'll do that together. Maybe next time we'll actually do that.
Okay.
It's not in the
Okay.
course just yet, but I do want to add it in as an extra week because it's a very big deal, perspective shifting. You know, when we were kids, we all wanted a magic wand, right?
Right.
Well, perspective shifting is that magic wand.
Okay.
I mean, look at how just through perspective shifting, how your whole divorce, that whole big saga, how it's now transformed from being this kind of negative thing to being this gift.
Right.
And also, you're now aware that it's a necessary gift.
Right.
There was no choice that, okay, it was ugly and horrible, but it had to be. It had to be to break you out of that bubble of unawareness, right?
Right.
There was no choice really, as you looking down at yourself, right? Like I said, if you your own game developer and you this character in your own game, and you learning your soul lessons, that's the point of the game, is for you to learn
Right.
soul lessons. You say, oh man, how am I going to get myself to break out of this bubble of unawareness? How? You've got to put pressure on them. You can't go and program them to be aware because that would defeat the object. Then you're just making a robot, right?
Right.
So you got to kind of set things up to put some pressure on somebody. Look at the profound pressure. The very fact that you were nasty and ugly and did all this stupid stuff, that's the pressure because your goodness was pressurized by that. All throughout these years, you felt bad about that, right? And that made the
Right.
pressure for you to be better. Well, at the time, yes, you did it because you didn't know any better and you thought you should do it and you were in this bubble. But your inner goodness, you knew your inner goodness would be pressured by that. You knew that at some point you'd have to look at that differently and come to make peace with it and figure out why it was necessary. And now you have. Now it makes sense. Yes?
Yes.
That's the point.
Yep.
That's what we want to get to. We want to get to that point where things make sense. And now your whole divorce makes sense to you, right? And all that ugliness and all that horribleness all makes sense. And you can
Yep.
see your ex as a gift. You can see the divorce as a gift. Now, you also have to trust that that same giftness is a gift for your children as well.
Hmm.
So you want to share this perspective shifting. That's what you want to share with your children. Not the fact that you're in a better place now, that you've come to resolution, you've learned. No, that's what you want to share. You want to share the fact that you've perspective shifted on the divorce and you see it in a different light and you've come to learn and grow from it. That's the point. You've shifted your perspective on it and you yourself as a person have learned and grown from it. In other words, the divorce and all that ugliness was a lesson, a mechanism to enhance and develop your awareness. Aren't you more aware now of what was involved?
Yep.
You're more aware of yourself as a person.
Absolutely.
You actually have your own awareness now. During the
Right.
time of the divorce, whose awareness were you weren't really aware, right?
No, it
It
was
wasn't.
just programming by mom,
Exactly, exactly,
society,
exactly,
yada yada.
exactly. Now, and you write this story out, and Donna, write it out in as much detail as you can, but also write it from this abstract perspective. You know what I mean? You're not writing just the details of the story. Yes, you can write those too, but you're writing a story of your awareness and of the gift, right?
Okay.
The gift from
Yeah.
the universe. And you know what? That's that story, the young man's story. That's what it's called. It's called the gift of intent. Actually, let me find that for you so I don't forget. Yeah, let me go right there and get it for you.
That's
Right.
a good story.
Oh, when you read the whole story, yeah, it's a great story. I love it. It's a really beautiful story for me. I want to just find it so I can give you the link for it because I am keen for you to read the whole story. Um,
Okay.
because it's not a story that necessarily has all the answers in it, and that's what makes it a good story. It's a story about a start of a process. And it's very much, a story of where we all are at in one way or another. That we can understand what we don't want, uh, but that you know what, this is always so weird to me. I know I have it posted, but when I search for it here on the blog, it doesn't actually always bring it up for some reason. I don't know why. Very strange the way this search works. Yeah, see, it only brings up the more recent posts. It doesn't bring up the old ones. I don't know why. Very odd. Well, there's other ways to do this. I'll have it in a second. So, anyway, I was trying to say that, that we have to, when we don't know what to do in the future, we can say, I know what I don't want. And that's what the young man's story started from, right? He said,
Right.
I know what I don't want. Uh, and that's very important when we say, I don't want to be a slave to convention. I don't want to be a robot. I don't want to be acting crappily. I don't want to be nasty and horrid. I want to be more, in other words. I know I don't want to be limited. So when we say we don't want, then we can say, I'm not going to be this way. I don't know what I am going to be yet, but I know what I don't want to be. So that's like step one, right?
Right.
I can't talk and type at the same time, apparently.
It's okay.
The gift of intent. It's very, very powerful when we look at our stories in this sense. When we understand it's always, 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 always about learning and growing. In other words, it's always about awareness, right? Because that's the same
Right.
thing. Learning and growing is about developing and expanding our awareness. That's what it's all about. Uh,
Hmm. I didn't really connect those two.
yes, yes. That's why we discuss these things. That's why we have these sessions, is to make those connections.
That makes total sense.
Yep, yep.
And I've experienced it. I've applied it. That's an application that's happened in my life many times. I
Yes,
just didn't have words for it.
that's the magic. That's the magic. Absolutely, that's the magic.
Nice.
Isn't that
Okay,
exciting?
it is exciting. It is. That turns it from sadness and tears to exciting and
To joy,
hopeful.
to joy.
Yeah.
There's a joy to it because not only do you realize that, hey, yes, at the time there was all sorts of stuff, but when I look back at it now, I can take joy in it. Why? Because it was necessary and because I came through. I absolutely did learn. I did develop and enhance my awareness as a result of that. So I did learn the lesson. That is something to be profoundly, profoundly, profoundly joyful about, right?
Right. I agree. I would like to stop now if that's okay.
Oh no,
And
that's totally perfect. That's exactly perfect. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah,
yeah, I'd like to kind of let all of this sort of just be with it for a
yes,
while and
yes,
then write my story
yes,
here.
yes. You must always say when you need to stop. That's very important, Donna. So all right, before you go, uh, I want to put in chat for you here. I'll put it in Facebook as well, the link. So before you close the window, open that link and bookmark it so that you can get to it later.
Okay.
Because when you close Zoom, that link goes away.
Where do I
Just
go
click
to
on it.
find the link?
No, just click on it on chat. Oh, open up the chat. At the bottom of
Open
it.
up the chat.
Yeah, and then
Gotcha.
it'll bring up the chat panel on the right hand side.
Gotcha. And chat, it says you and me. Oh,
Right.
chat. I got it. Okay. And
You
then
see,
do
you see the link there, right?
I do.
Okay, so now you just open that link and then bookmark it, in your browser so that you can get back to it, or copy it if you want, copy and paste it somewhere you can get to it. But the
I
easiest way is just to bookmark it. Then
bookmark it.
yeah, yeah. Once you've
And
opened.
what browser do I choose? That
Oh, but you'll just usually open your
Google,
yeah. Well, Google is the
Yahoo?
search engine, but yeah, your Chrome or anything. Just click on it. It should open up the window, doesn't it? Or does it ask you for a browser?
It asked me for a browser. What
Oh,
like once I bookmarked it. It says
that's.
Bing, Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and then I
Is it
guess I pick
asking you
one.
to log in, or I don't know? It's kind of. Are you on your phone or the computer?
I'm on my phone.
Oh, that's why. I don't know which on your phone. I think you may have to choose a
Oh,
phone browser. So I don't know what browsers are on your phone.
how about it gives me an option to send it somewhere, so I'll send it to my
Say,
email,
there
and
you
then I'll
go.
be able to open it up.
Perfect. Perfect. And then you know
Okay.
where it is as well. That's a great idea. Send it to your email. Yes, I forgot about that. See, I don't actually use an actual mobile phone. I just
Okay.
have the phone on the computer. But that's a perfect way to resolve it. Yeah. So
Okay.
so that's great. So yeah, yeah. Just quickly before you go, I just want to show you what it looks like. You see, there's a story, and you can actually listen to it. I read it a long time ago, so I didn't read it as nicely as I read now. I've got more practice now, but you see, it's pretty. It's all the pictures.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so I know I love the story. It's a huge little story. But anyway, again, this story is like a template also for the post that you want to make, and the post is about the gifts from the life gifts of my divorce, right?
Right.
As a topic, maybe you don't change it, of course, but that's my suggestion, to write it from that perspective. You, because it's not the story of your divorce, it's the story about the life gifts of your divorce. Different story, right?
Right. Totally.
Okay. Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it, Donna. I really enjoy this and doing this with you. Truly, it's a massive big deal. It's very profound. And we grow all the time. We grow, we grow, we grow always. That's what it's all about, right? So to
And
wrap
you
up.
grow with this too?
Oh,
You
absolutely. Every
Yeah.
time I grow, always, every single time, every time, always. I understand more, I understand better, I feel more, I connect more. And also, hey, you know what? You see that mind map of mine. Yes, that, of ours, really, it's not just my mind map, but I understand what's on there. But to apply it all, we want to be constantly be reminded of the things. Yes, to bring it more into application. So it never ever gets old. Every time what we're doing is application. So when we discuss this, that's application for me.
Mm. Good to know, because that does help people.
Oh
How
yeah.
you were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about you feel like it's a one way. I mean, there was a
Never.
hesitation to contact you
Why?
today.
Why?
And it's
Never.
Sunday. And
Never.
am I just
Yeah.
getting? So what
No.
you said was helpful,
No. I
and it's
appreciate that.
assisting.
And I
Yeah,
do try. And again, that it's we doing this. This is a collaboration, and a collaboration. It's 1 plus 1 doesn't make two. No, 1 plus 1 equal more.
right.
Right? So there's always more when we add the two together. Yes, it seems maybe like it's one way, but really it's not. Because every time I'm explaining something, I'm also applying what I know.
Mm, good,
It's an
good.
opportunity for me to apply. And it reminds me of what? So that whole concept of the new nobility and their way of living, that's what they're always doing. They're explaining to each other, and it doesn't matter who gets more. It's always about application, and you living what you want to live, right?
Right.
So through our interactions, I'm putting my mind map into practice.
Nice.
Yeah,
Thank
is that
you.
awesome? It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yes.
It's
That is
magical.
awesome.
It's magical. It's always magical. Plus, I mean, just think of all the other simple little things. I'm practicing my communication. I'm practicing my interactions. I'm practicing my reading skills of adapting to Donna, to being appropriate towards the communication, to fine tuning it, to share in a way that's maximally beneficial. So I'm doing 101 different things, which are all valuable to me. I mean, I'm just starting. There's a zillion things that I'm doing.
It it is magical because you
Yep.
knew exactly how to go to attunement, and that's
Right.
totally what I needed.
Right.
That
And
was
all I
amazing.
do that is I simply have this habit. It's a lifelong habit already of appropriateness. So I listen to what's going on, and then I say, what's appropriate? I identify the abstract. I say, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? What's the intent here? When I know what the intent is, then it's very easy to be appropriate.
Mm,
Appropriateness is pretty simple, really, when we have some awareness of what's going on. If our intent and the it's like we're trying to understand and learn, well, then we just do what's appropriate to bring that into awareness. It's all very simple in the end, really. I don't do anything really, quite so wonderful as it seems. I'm simply being appropriate, really, and I've just got that training and the habit to be appropriate, right? And that ability to zoom out and look at it from overview perspective, which is attunement. Exactly, that's what you're saying.
ah,
I'm attuning to you, and through that, it allows me to be appropriate, to look from that outside lens.
I like that. I'd like to enhance my ability to do that.
Yeah, it will. It will. Absolutely. It's what we're on this journey to do. And that writing of that story, it's one of the things is the application of appropriateness, because you're writing something in an appropriate way from a particular context and with a particular intent. Your intent is now to make clear this issue, this concept, this whole big thing of the life gifts from the universe and the life gifts of awareness, of learning and growth. And that whole divorce, you're writing it from the perspective of it being a life gift, not a trauma.
Right.
Very
Thank
different.
you.
Very,
Right.
very, very different. In that too, you're also shifting from victim mindset
Right.
into joy mindset,
Right.
celebration mindset, and back to our mind map. And we said, why do we put appreciation as one of the A terms for awareness in its own little triangle? You see, they got these little power triangles, right? And we got
Right.
awareness, attention. Yes, you're going to pay specific attention so you can train your brain, but you also want to pay appreciation. So we're shifting our awareness to one from being, pity, victim, and all this other shit to saying, oh no, appreciation. This actually was a life gift. This was something awesome and fantastic and necessary. Boom. Suddenly life is transformed. Right?
Right. Oh, right. Most definitely.
I love it.
Yes.
And you're not only writing this to the universe, which leverages you and puts you into that mode of earnest sincerity. You're also going to then share your post to the universe with your children for them to get some more perspective of you and understand you a bit better, right?
Yep. Gonna do it.
Magical, magic. And hey, when we share things to the universe, we put that out into the universe as an energy. And sometimes we don't even have to actually share that stuff with people specifically, like in an actual, like an email or a letter. It somehow just goes into, even I call it the grid work, like this behind, that's like the grid work. So
Right.
when we share things on that deep level with that deep power and earnest energy, we put it out on the grid work. Those are what the posts are, and somehow they find their way into life. It's quite an amazing thing. But that's something you just have to take on belief for the time being. But nonetheless.
I understand what you're saying. I experienced that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So it's
understand what grid work is. I can't wait till we get into that. That'll
right,
be cool.
right, right. So
All
no.
right.
So know that making that post, there's a more to it, and there's always more,
Right.
of course. There's always more,
Of
right?
course.
That's why we keep saying it, because there really is always more, and it's so fun, it's so exciting. It's just like you can't contain it. There's always more. You can't get enough of it, right? It's just the
Right.
magic never ends. It's really incredible. On that word ends, we end too, so that you can save your energy. I love that you tell me, can we stop now? Very important, because I'll go on all day, so you got to stop me.
All right. All right.
It's very important. So that's fantastic. And what a magical chat. See, every time, isn't it just, how can this not be good for me? It's just magical. It's just true joy, and it's magical always, right?
Good. Well,
Well,
sometimes when I have these conversations, I drain people.
no, I know, me too, but they're not draining for me. They're energizing for me. That's why I can go all day. I love this. Is this what I live for? My whole life has been this, but most of my life, I only had Olivia to chat to or myself. So, so somebody else to chat to is a big gift. So it's
Good.
a big
All
deal.
right.
Now,
Thank you.
do me a favor, by the way, Donna. Also, sorry, before we
Yes.
go, real quick, reach out to Olivia. She's not always available here for the chat sessions, and she does a lot of her own things. But when you reach out to her, like on Facebook and chat, or like WhatsApp or whatever, but through Facebook, just text her and connect with her and chat to her, because you'll get a very, very, very different perspective on things coming from Olivia. I come at stuff from one angle and she comes from another. It's like, we heart and mind, and through that you get the full picture. It's very powerful. So it's very useful, and she likes to interact, and this is and she won't reach out to you necessarily, but she'll definitely respond. She likes being reached out to, and she likes being asked. So just
Uh,
ask her. That's just how
right.
what gets her going. She's just I know it's difficult to explain in a short way, but just know that you're not going to be imposing to ask on her. Asking her to interact with her, it's like a gift to her. It energizes her and brings her out. So it's a gift to ask and interact. But it's very important to do. Very, very important.
And like, how is she connected to you, and what is she?
Well, she's the heart in that story, but our we've gone through lots of life experiences together, and she's the co-creator of the course, and you wrote the book together.
Oh, she's
So,
involved in the course
right,
itself and
right,
not a
right, right.
participant.
Right, right.
Oh, oh,
So you haven't
okay.
you haven't met her yet. Sometimes she's honored. She comes and sits here in the chair next to me here. You see the chair here, and we do it together. But she's not here today. Actually, she slept over somewhere. So she lives in Attunement, and the universe takes her on very different journeys. So she's not always here, but she'll know who you are. So when you reach out to her, just say, hey,
Okay.
I wanted to connect with you and chat with you, or you can even say, "Oh, soul said so," whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter, and just reach out and just ask to connect with her, and she would respond. She laughs when that happens, so it's very profound for her too. And if you ever get a chance to do a module with her, a session with her, take it. It'd be a very different experience.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Thank you.
magic, yeah. And she comes from that intuitive heart sense, from a different angle. So we'll be very helpful for you, yeah.
Okay. When's
Brilliant.
our next scheduled group session?
That will be on Wednesday. It's Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
Wednesday evening, and then Saturday mornings. So those are
So
the two.
Wednesday evening is 8 o'clock my time? Am I remembering that
Correct,
right?
correct,
Okay.
correct. And then Saturday at 12 o'clock
Saturday,
your time. But we'll
12.
yeah. So those hopefully more people show up, which is nice. I like when we have the many people, and I like when we do them individually as well. It's just nice to have the variety. But those are the two that are always there, and then for the rest we just do as appropriate when time allows.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I love it, Donna. I love it. I love it. I love it. Magic, magic, magic. All
That
right.
is. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.